Noting that it's 7:05, I am going to call the Board of Health meeting of September 20th, 2017 to order. So we have 3 variance hearings scheduled this evening and then a number of other items to address. But I'm going to announce that there are a couple of items to be added to the agenda as they were not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. So they are, one is a mounding study update. I had a discussion with Scott Horsley today. And 6 Abbey Road, there was an amendment made to the master deed that we need to review. So do I have a motion to approve adding those 2 items to the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so let's take care of those since we, oops. And that was the update.
I thought that I'd be the first one to get bleeped.
We have a tight contest there, Matt, I think.
I usually try not to let that come out. Can I keep going? Oh, okay. All right. So I spoke with Scott Horsley about the research that he's been doing, and he's been finding some information, but nothing final yet. There are more pieces to look into. The 2 things he's seen addressed by augmented mounding designs are one thing for phosphorus, and that could be used for non-mounded systems as well, but some sort of iron, actual placement of some iron-bearing material that addresses phosphorus as the effluent percolates through the soil. And the other things, of course, are nitrogen. And as I had mentioned, he is familiar with the Barnstable County Health Department, who does a lot of the septic studies on the Cape, and with the lead researcher there. So they have something that they call the layer cake method that they've been testing out, and that involves putting a layer of wood chips down, and that provides some support for bacteria, and I'm presuming denitrifying bacteria, because they do like carbon, certainly in wastewater treatment plants. And I've seen that mentioned in studies elsewhere in the country, the idea of adding a layer of some sort of compost-like or wood chip material. So he's looking into, how long that lasts is certainly one thing, because once you place it, there is going to be some degradation and sort of consumption over time of that. So he's going to look into that, and he's still looking into other techniques that would address other constituents besides just nitrogen and phosphorus. And he was also starting to find information about possible supplemental injections that could be made into that wood chip layer at a later date to kind of re-beef up its carbon content so that that denitrification process could continue. But more to come on that, so that's the early returns on the mounding study. And if anybody, as you're thinking about things, or if you trip across something, we can always send him information. We can send him questions. So, trying to think of, we had a meandering conversation somewhat, but.
I'd also be interested if he finds information about the vertical separation, if there's anything, not only what kind of materials could be used, but anything about vertical separation studies, whether it be 4 feet, 5 feet, or some other distance, and especially if he can find that for a variety of soil types, Daryl?
Mm-hmm. We did talk a little bit about that kind of general concept, and certainly sands are not as good as other materials in general, and that's where the sewer gravel sort of falls into that. We did also talk about if it was a mounded system, but it was above shallow ledge and that sort of thing.
Yeah, bedrock,
How
yeah.
do we want to think about that?
Right,
So I
yeah.
raised that as an issue with him. So more to come, and we can keep feeding back, questions or concerns that we have so that he knows what to gather for information for us.
So is there any sense of schedule?
Turns out he was very busy teaching at Harvard. That consumed way more time than he anticipated. So he's been in contact with, I don't know how to pronounce his name, George Huffelder. He's the person at Barnstable who leads a lot of the research. And then he's been collecting this different information and looking at some different studies, but he hasn't synthesized everything, nor has he finished what he wants to do in terms of checking on
So
those other dynamics of, soil thickness and soil types, or what other materials might be added, what kind of filtering. And apparently this layer cake idea is being evaluated by the DEP to be under their IA
in a
program.
Okay.
So it's getting some additional review there, so.
So if we had a guess, though, do you think it's in 2 months or, 3 months?
He was planning to get back to us in the next week or two with his next round of information. So originally, he thought for this research phase, 45 days. He's he's halfway into that or something, but I think it's finding the information is not as easy as one would think. So there are these few places that have some, but then that next level of detail is not readily available
Accessible.
necessarily. So that's the challenge, when you'll trip across that or not. I guess that's the part that's hard to predict.
And sorry to, one last thing. So is his first, quote, deliverable to us going to be a presentation at a Board of Health meeting, or is it going to be a written document?
That, I thought, might be something to consider in terms of what the budget looks like, and where he gets to and what kind of information he finds, because it might be something that, if it's very concrete, then a report could be great as a first step. If it's got all these questions around it or uncertainties, or how does the board feel about it, then it might be better, I think, to have him come in and talk to us about it, so we can say, we're not comfortable with that yet, or, yeah, that sounds great, that topic is covered. So, but your thoughts are always welcomed. So I guess I don't feel comfortable locking into one method or another right
Right.
now, just because I think it depends on what comes out
Okay.
of the research. So,
Okay, so I guess next time we'll evaluate and,
yeah, and see, and maybe we could even do a dial-in. It's not as easy, but since we often have these televised, at least we have the equipment here to make it a little more audible than if we just had a phone sitting here and
right.
hoping for the best reception-wise. So, but we have had people dial into meetings in the past, so. And that could be kind of that middle ground method of, but somebody writing a report takes a lot of hours too. So if it's easier for him to come and explain what he's found and where the strengths and weaknesses are, that could potentially be more efficient than him writing a report, budget-wise.
Right.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
So it sounds like our sort of goals for the next meeting will be an interval update with kind of budget status, kind of findings to date. We'll figure out the best way to communicate that. And then, I know there'd been sort of the discussion with the Hunting Lane project and kind of if there are ways to piggyback that work onto this work. Do you think it's feasible to try to answer some of that at the next meeting, or do you want to kind of get a little bit more preliminary information first and then kind of proceed accordingly.
Right now, I don't feel like we're any closer to saying, oh yeah, mounding
Okay.
is a likely or unlikely.
Okay.
Um,
So it sounds like
So-
then kind of an update with further discussions probably driven at future meetings from that, but the goal kind of at our next meeting would be, here's where we're at now, we've got a little bit more substantial information. Sounds good.
Okay, all right. And then for Abbey Road, we had talked about having an amendment to the master deed. And I can't remember if we knew this at the last meeting, or this is one of those things that transpired in between meetings, but we talked about having a separate deed recording to address the phrase. Town council advised against that unless it was crafted in a certain way, and felt that putting it into the master deed would be the strongest because there were those clauses that could be viewed as contradictory to that, so they wanted to see a stronger link. But in any case, so it went back and forth, and this afternoon, we did receive the executed amendment to the master deed, and then we forwarded that on to town council, and they were able to look at it quickly and got back to us and said that it looked good.
Okay.
So, so the way it looks a little different is it has some numbering that, and I actually didn't take the time to compare the numbering to what they had suggested, but they had it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we looked at it, and, we said that there was some chance that we might choose to put it in a different place, but it wasn't worth, the stylistic difference between two lawyers to do anything but accept his number. So we put his clause with that 6.3, whatever it is,
Mhm.
put it in exactly in the sentence that accompanied your communication from your behalf to me. So it's exactly the same.
Okay, so, right, when town council had reviewed it, they had a suggested numbering system, so they were able to take what she had recommended and use it in that way. It linked it right into the master deed and the flow that they felt was appropriate, so. Do we need to vote on that, or we're all set?
No, because
we've
once we had that,
received what
then
the-
actually, you can sign off on that building application then later tonight.
Okay, all right. So did you hear that? I'll be signing the building
I did
application, so.
tell the purchaser contacted me, and I told her that we expected to put it today, because I had somebody that was going to today. And that we expected that its next meeting contact her. Should be okay, so I'm glad I'll be able to.
All right, okay, let's see. Oh, what kind of fun item? All right, how about we do Sharp's disposal?
Okay.
I
The
chose
only-
that as the most fun, so I hope you.
Well, no, I really don't have anything. I don't know if you remember, but back in June, we discussed it briefly, that I had talked with Jim White, who's the health director in Natick, about possibly working something out with them to have Sherborn residents be allowed to use the Natick's disposal unit. I have tried to contact Jim, and he hasn't gotten back to me, so I'm still waiting. If I don't hear from him in the next week, I will see him next week at the region meeting, so I'll just talk to him then. So
Okay.
there's no update yet.
All right. And again, just so people know, there are drop-off locations, and some pharmacies will take it, and also that they sell containers for managing sharps so that they're safe.
For Holliston residents, yeah. No,
Sherborn Police Station accepts medications, so there's just different programs in different places. And what else do we take? Mercury-bearing thermostats and other things as part of a recycling program with the waste management firm who takes our refuse for waste to energy. So, and they try to keep the mercury out of that system so that it doesn't get burned and get released to the air. So, okay. All right. The update on the health agent administrative review of regulations. I did get to speak with Beth Halal, one of our health agents, and she has agreed to go through the
Great.
regulations and in the office, so that'll add a little extra office hour time for folks if they want to use that, and we'll also see how that goes and if it is used. But she'll be going through looking for any kind of administrative wording improvements, clearing things up. She's going to be talking to the other health agents and to the administrator and clerk to see what things aren't clear to folks who may come into the office and that sort of thing. She was certainly comfortable with that. I also indicated that maybe there would be kind of other things to research, depending on what kind of time the board has, but at least the starter proposed regulations that we had at our last regulatory update public hearing, that the concepts were supported on some aspects, but not all, and so that might be something else to just give her those notes and see what else she might research. Maybe there are other towns. I have done a little looking. Some other towns have things that we might be able to borrow from to simplify it. So, but we could talk about that once we get through just the first basic part.
So how many hours per week is she going to be?
Did she figure out hours yet? I think she's trying to
No,
just look
she's
at her
just-
schedule, but we were
yeah.
talking about 1 to 2
Okay.
for
In the office?
about a month.
Okay.
And she has also been sitting in the office working on food inspections,
Yeah.
so she has been there, just in case anybody had a health agent-specific kind of question. Okay. All right, I guess I'll tackle, and we'll see. If we don't finish, we'll just pick it up again. The discussion of the general process of animal and manure management. Just want to review that, because every now and then a question comes up in town about manure management, and we have a bylaw for manure management. I don't know if folks have seen that, but kind of one question around that is, well, who is responsible for enforcing or overseeing or helping out with manure management? And the bylaw names police and building inspector and board of health and maybe
Conservation.
conservation. Is animal control in there? There are a lot of potential parties to be involved, is basically what it comes down to. And it depends on what the issues are. So, oh, great.
Well, I just have, so it's here. This is who's responsible, and then further, I did just copy the groundwater protection bylaw in there.
Okay. So police officers, Board of Health agents, building inspector, Concom agents, fire chief, or fire chief's designates. And, let's see,
Chapter 21, Section 5.
Now you're just showing off.
yeah, so. So, okay, some of the key things currently about manure management are how much can be stored and where, and basically we don't want to have a lot of manure stored near a well or near a wetlands. So that would be the simple part, and then not too close to a neighbor's lawn, and certainly not, or a yard, and nothing flowing onto another's property. So those are the general concepts. It's longer than that. So there was an incident in town recently, or a question from one neighbor about another neighbor, and the building inspector and the health agent did go and take a look at it. And so if the issues are raised, they do get addressed by the staff. And they can compare and look at it, and there may be other issues that they have beyond these, but, and it's come up in the past where the health agent has had to go out and take a look at things when there had been a complaint that material was migrating onto a neighbor's property. So they do get investigated. When it comes up,
So can I ask a quick question? So I noticed some people were asking on next door Sherborn about there's a dead deer on someone's property, and they were saying it obviously smelled, and they called the police department, and the police department said, well, it's private property, you know, obviously we can't do anything, and we don't have a dedicated animal control officer at this point, or at least that's what this person was told. But I don't know, again, that they would deal with private
Well,
property.
it's a policeman.
Right, so, private property issues, and, so just thinking about this, in terms of, you know, impact, obviously degradation happens pretty quickly, to animal carcass, but, is there anything addressing that sort of issue as well, or no?
that one I could believe gets a little tricky. I mean, there can be nuisance complaints from
definitely odors,
odors,
yeah.
which happens, but that's not an action that
Not
was
in our
caused by that
regulations.
property owner.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
where I
Right.
think that
Yeah.
one gets to be.
Well, I think this is sort of a
difficult.
parallel question of stuff that's kind of gross and smells.
Right.
So I think like manure was the starting topic, and
Yeah.
this is a sort of secondary question of
Yeah.
figuring out which of these topics are in scope for Board of Health, or where we have mechanisms to help address community issues, versus which ones are out of scope. So like rabid raccoon, I think, sort of goes to animal control officers, a live, active, threatening piece. But I think dead deer is
Just-
dead deer.
They're
But-
burn the woods.
Right, but I think trying to figure out, like, are there possible solutions? Again, I don't know if it's a Board of Health issue or a selectman issue, or
Is,
sort of.
there are definitely people who have businesses deer hunting, and they might know or be able to help or have an idea of a way to dispose of a body. They might not want to
Carcass,
lift it
yeah.
up and throw it on their shoulders like the deer hunter that I know, if it's been dead for a while and
Yeah.
rotting.
Yeah.
But they might be able to help, or at least give some advice to the homeowner.
Right, and by the same token, how long do they smell? I mean, it's a natural
It's- it's-
process.
it's
Sun next door
days
was
that-
about
that the
4
odor is
days.
Yeah.
But I guess, Ellen, so
Bring in the coyotes.
one question I had, so that we can provide clarity to town residents, is there an animal control officer if there were something like a rabid raccoon, and I
Yeah.
personally experienced the whole bat issue? Is there something that we can tell town residents to do in case of a potentially, you know, rabid animal issue?
Isn't Kimberly
There has
Morrow?
been an animal
Isn't
control
Kim
officer,
Morrow?
but I
The
guess
animal
we're,
control officer, I believe right now, is a policeman
Yeah.
that
What happened to
does,
Kim
it-
Morrow?
that falls under the selectmen,
Okay.
the animal control
I mean,
officer.
she's not, there's.
We have the animal inspector, but she does not, in the past, she used to bring the heads to be tested
Lab.
for,
Mhm.
yeah, for rabies, but
But not to
she
actually
doesn't,
get
yeah.
it off.
That's just something I feel like maybe, or on the town website, it would just be helpful one way or the other, so that people would know if this is an issue at my house. It's definitely a health and safety issue, that they
Yeah.
know who to call. And so if that's a policeman, fine, but,
But I think that again kind of
Yeah,
goes to the like
it's-
rabid animal versus the
yeah.
dead stinky animal, and sort of.
Yeah, I don't think we would put something on the Board of Health website.
no,
to call.
I'm wondering if the town
Oh,
website,
okay.
I'm just,
Like if
it's
there's
almost like a
anything
health
you
and
can
safety issue. but-
Yeah,
Back to the selectmen if they're who the
Yeah.
animal control officer sets, because I think people often say, oh, I wonder if this is Board of Health, and it's sort of not, and so just, I don't know.
yeah.
I got a shovel in
I-
a big black bag.
What?
We had like a fawn last
Oh.
year, but that was easier because it was bag worthy. And then I got like a lot of brownie points because it was super gross. So gross.
Bag worthy.
Yeah, but that was easy because it fit in a bag. But like, adult deer would be very hard to manage as an individual, especially if
Yeah.
it's partially decayed. So
Right.
it'd be unappealing.
Anyways,
And I guess we
sorry
have
for that.
enough animals around the
Sorry for that
driveway.
digression, but it was clear people in town didn't
Yeah.
know who to call, and that was more my reaction,
Yeah.
that even though it's not
Well,
us.
we should
Right.
know,
It should,
so we
it-
can.
right.
Well, and I'm sure if they called the Board of Health, Ellen would refer them over to.
I would refer them to the police,
Okay,
yeah.
well, now we can say that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, call Ellen.
And it's,
She's on it.
Hello.
Hi, okay.
Right on time.
Explain it.
And it's 7:30, and we have a variance hearing for a septic replacement at 18 Page Farm Road.
we do have all the green cards and one returned unopened envelope.
Okay, so the abutters have been notified, so we can open the hearing. And so are there any abutters here this evening for this one? No, okay. But anyone who's interested, if you'd like to come up and look at the plan as the engineer explains the circumstances warranting the variances, please do.
I can never see it.
Let me come down this side.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Eric Dickinson with Civilized Solutions, here on behalf of the applicant. This project is 18 Page Farm Road. This is the subdivision located between Maple Street and Washington Street. This is a 4-bedroom, single-family home. The existing septic system is located in the backyard right here, in failure. The on-site well is on the other side of the pool area. It is uphill. We have a 125-foot buffer, which we stayed out of. What's not shown really on this plan is there's pretty mature landscaping all over, and it's pretty heavily treed. With that in mind, we did our testing near the existing system. The perk rate was pretty bad. It was almost an hour.
Per minute,
About a
per
minute.
inch?
Yeah, 60 minutes per inch. So we ended up with designing it. It's an Elgin system with a pump. There's also a retaining wall at the end of this, so in an effort to, I lost myself here. To maintain the retaining wall without adding a lot of elevation to it and limit the riprap slope right here, we are requesting some variances from both the state and local regulations to groundwater. I should note that with an Elgin, you can go 2 feet to groundwater with a perk rate like this, but we ended up going just 3 feet. That's about it.
Okay. Mark, any comments?
Well, Eric did note the soil testing for the percolation tests were long, and that's the C layer, the naturally occurring layer that is dependent for the septic system depends in most use. They did have a better perk rate in the BW layer. The site was, in some respects, a difficult site to work on. I think the engineering on this fits for what had to be done, so I'm okay with the way it's been designed.
Is there any reason to think that it would have worked any better anywhere else on the property? Or-
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, we had done another one across the street, was it last year, and it was fairly similar. This whole area is a sandy loam, fine sandy loam material. So it's, in our experience, it's consistent with the area.
And does that extra foot from 2 to 3 maybe offer a better chance for it to dry out before it hits groundwater?
I would say yes.
Because that's one of the concerns with the high perk rates is things don't dry out and everything stays
Right.
moist.
Right,
And
ponding.
that
Yeah.
supports the bacteria and viruses, but.
They do have the secondary treatment happening within the Elgin sponge-type leaching unit. It's not really a trench, it's a unit, so that helps to some degree. But indeed, with it raised at the level it's at, it'll be also with above the BW layer, which is perking at a better rate, so
Oh, okay.
there's
Oh, all right.
it's not the best, but it's not the worst in respect to the location and how it's been designed.
So the BW layer might be drier.
Yeah, it was, and it perked at a
Less than 2 minutes per inch.
less than 2.
Yeah.
sitting on top of the hard pan.
Top of it, yeah.
We see that, not just here, but in other areas of the town.
And there's no ledge at all in this
Get
area.
down pretty deep.
Yeah, we had boulders, but we didn't encounter any.
Yeah.
About 84, well, we had some refusal, but you got down, one testo was down to 120,
Yeah.
10 feet.
I mean boulders and cobbles.
It was the machine.
Yeah, those are okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's right.
Yeah, that rubber tire, yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
We had a machine that could have been a little bit more powerful, and they could have dug a little deeper.
Yeah.
Is it direct push, like would it?
What they do is they have the backhoe and they dig into it.
Oh,
on an
just a
excavator.
regular backhoe.
Yeah.
Yeah. About 3 feet wide, give or take, and we tried to reach 10 feet, but sometimes machine capability doesn't allow for that when you have boulders.
Okay, any other questions at the moment? So shall we take these one by one? Is that okay? Okay. So we could do the, 8.01 together, both parts. So do we have a motion of grant of variance to section 8.01?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and so, this is just adjusting the separation to groundwater based on the conditions you've described and the technology and, so, any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then, section 8.02 is related to, again, where groundwater is, and since we're looking at a replacement system, we do often need to grant this variance. It's still being, is it still being built up?
Slightly, yes.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
it is being raised out of the ground
Six.
some number of feet, so graded.
System.
So do we have
About a foot
a
and a half
motion to
above
grant a
grade.
variance to section 8.02?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I'll let you explain this one because you haven't
Okay.
discussed it.
That's-
It's related, but
Yeah, this is just going from 4 feet to 3 feet under the state regulations, which I'm not even certain, do you have to ask for that if you use an Elgin?
It's, you
part of
got it
the-
under the LUA for the local upgrade approval, and you did have the appropriate forms signed, so.
Right.
You,
Okay.
you are required in the general approval for any IA to ask for a local upgrade approval, so
Okay.
you did the right thing.
Okay. Yeah, it's just going from 4 feet to 3 feet.
So what a local upgrade approval is a little different from asking for a waiver from the actual Title V codes. It's, the state provided a list of opportunities to grant, not waivers per se, but local upgrade approvals. So it's different from granting a waiver. It's more or less a checklist that you're offered. So, and that's how all the innovative alternative technologies work. They actually allow you to ask for a local upgrade approval and go to 2 feet to groundwater if you ask for that local upgrade approval, which you're doing.
Right. You have
That
to have
you are
certain
doing.
criteria though, like the system has to be failed.
Yep,
No increase in flow, it's a 4-bedroom, they're not adding a bedroom.
that is
And
good.
there's no reduction to any of the setbacks to wells.
right, so it's
So,
an
yeah.
upgrade, it's not for new construction,
That
it's
is correct.
specifically for upgrades and to try to get better performing systems overall.
Right.
But also the technology's compensating for some of the,
Yeah.
deviance.
Exactly.
So-
That's why the state gave that leeway. It's made it so much different for people to repair their systems than prior to 1995 when Title V was different.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to, section 15.4051H, and this is of the state code Title V.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we can close the hearing, and are the plans ready for approval?
The plans are ready for approval, conditional to the deed restrictions for a garbage grinder and the notice of the innovative alternative system.
So do we have a motion to approve the plans subject to receipt of the 2 deed recordings as noted?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Are they gonna preserve some of the ornamentals out there? They had a beautiful yard filled
Yeah,
with
they're
ornamentals.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes?
Hi, since this is the time that, I wonder if we could take out of order, the issue of 90 Street.
Maple?
To here, and then here.
Yeah. And, you know, if we need to, we'll just stop that and pick it up again, but
So this is 97 Maple, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw your note. We were aware, just so the board knows, Paul is the engineer that the applicant for 97 Maple Street hired to design the septic system. You'll know it's under my business for the building application. There was a building application that we had received a while back, and then it came back showing they wanted to put a half bathroom into the workshop. It's a workshop slash arts and crafts type unit. And so with that said, the question came up, the original permit came in to update the wood, what did it say, workshop. So we didn't know they had finished rooms and it said workshop. When it came back, the question started arising, why would they need a bathroom in a workshop? And we found out from the builder, no, it's being finished or it's finished. So I said, well, that's a whole different category of review. So I started the review process, and my intent tonight was to go over what they've submitted as it relates to the existing house, and it looks like a shed to some degree. It's not too tall. And then I rejected the permit, but the building inspector said most of the work was already done. So there's not much I can do about that. But as it relates to issuing a occupancy permit, I believe the building inspector will not do that until we get the half bath, which is already there. I thought they were just applying for it, but it's there. He caught it. Thankfully, he caught it. Having a disposal system for it. So they had a disposal system put in, I believe, in the year 2001. I'm recalling from my review beginning of the week. So it's an updated septic system. The septic tank's a little bit more elevated than the actual plumbing probably coming from the workshop. So a couple things may have to happen. It's up to the board to determine on a room count if they should do a deed restriction on the amount of rooms, since it's a 4-bedroom, and it could be 9 rooms, it could be 10, and I'll let the board look at that and decide. And then I think the purpose Paul's here for is he would like to go over maybe some difficulties that he said in his phone message, that work out a solution for putting a half bath for the building, the septic system, if he could discuss it. So I don't want to thank Paul. I haven't had a chance to talk to him. The call came in this afternoon at 5:19. So if the board so wishes to allow Paul to discuss that, or would you want to do the
are you
room?
the homeowners, workshop owners? Okay. Sure.
This structure is a barn that goes back to the 19th century. It was remodeled at times, I guess, over the years. We were going to actually tear it down, put a garage in, and discovered that the cost of the foundation would be excessive. So we decided that it was in bad condition. It was heated by gas. It was divided into 2 rooms. It's gas heated and air conditioned. My wife Deb, who's here, has used that for painting, an art studio. And the other room had a wood stove in it. And I guess an airplane had been built in that room by somebody at some point. But the building was in disrepair. And so we decided rather than build a garage, we would fix it up. Windows, new insulation. We would put in a large utility sink for my wife's, who's a flower arranger. So we've got a 4-foot soapstone sink for that. And in the process of doing that, we said to ourselves, wouldn't it be nice to have a toilet here should biological needs arise? And so we have a airplane-sized closet with a toilet in it. My builder is from Sudbury. He's a great guy. I think this is the first project he's done here. He's tried to do everything by the books, and Chris has been by the house several times. I don't believe, I haven't had the chance to meet Mark. I'll wave at you across the room, Mark. I don't think Mark's had the chance to be there yet. But
Okay,
that's
so.
what we're doing. The one thing that the plumbing inspector asked us was to put a sink into the toilet room, which, since if you come out of the toilet room, there is a soapstone sink that is almost as big as this table. But we said, okay, if we've got to put a sink in that room, which really is like an airplane-size sink, we're happy to do that. So in any event,
Okay.
that's
So, yeah,
what we're doing.
All right, we need just a minute to count rooms, because it's not the bathroom, that's the issue. You could have 15 bathrooms. It's just the room count, because that's how septic system size is determined. So, but,
We're
If I
reducing
can-
the room count.
Yes, and if I can, yeah, that's a state code to count the rooms, but Madam Chair, if I may, the sunroom, I spoke with the builder on Monday of this week, as well as last week, and he did say that the sunroom is a heated room, so if that's wrong, let me know, because he was figuring it was. I think he would know that. So is the sunroom heated? The sunroom?
He hasn't been in our sunroom, sir.
So the question would be to you, if I,
the-
through you, Madam Chair, may
Yeah,
we ask the
that's- yep,
applicant if the
absolutely.
sunroom's heated, it's for his benefit.
The big
to-
thing is just, when a room's a room, it goes towards a room count, so if it's a finished room, that's
and
part of what
heated,
drives it.
yeah.
And so it's less about your use, but also the next owner, because this is our only time to kind of touch it. And so if they're finished rooms, you may say that's one thing that we use it for.
That's how it was when we moved in. It's
That's
really an extension of the small living room.
But I think our question is, if the sunroom's not
It-
heated, that's,
It is heated,
Okay.
and it's not.
Thank you, that's what we needed to know.
okay,
So if I can go over how I did the room count.
okay.
Sunroom, now that that is cleared, I counted
Share
it.
with
Yeah.
Lisa, and then
So
we'll share
the-
down
the
here.
first
and
floor,
everybody can see.
So just so you know, the first floor I put, it was anywhere from 3 to 5 rooms. And the reason for that is the kitchen became the new area for dining. It's not all open. I asked the builder, there's 2 doors. The kitchen that is now to the far right of that plan you're looking at on the first floor was originally the family room. They moved rooms around basically and updated them. So if I count the dining room, because it's not open to the kitchen, or they call it eating room, as a dining room, it would be 5 total rooms. If I don't, you have the 2 swing doors. I see it as a additional room because it's not open to
Is
the
that what
kitchen.
you're talking
That's
about?
the room there. You got the one that says existing, whatever I'm reading.
Or
it.
eating area.
Eating, yeah. And then you have the family room, which originally was the dining room, and the living room, and the sunroom. So it could be anywhere from 4 to 5. Now that we get the sunroom figured out as heated. Second floor, 4 bedrooms. And then what happened to help out the situation, the barn, I guess it is, or the artist's workshop, originally had 2 rooms, and that's on the very bottom. Now you can see that's, I circled it to show it became 1 room. You may be looking at a plan that was modified to show it as 1 room. So if I add it up, it's anywhere from 9 to 10 rooms based on the changes.
And is there a basement associated with this?
It's an ancient stone,
Earthen,
wet basement, but yes, there is a basement.
But it's concrete floor, unfinished. Or
Yeah,
stone.
Yeah, it's stone,
Okay.
oh, definitely unfinished.
Okay.
Wet.
The builder indicated
Okay.
the same.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so.
all right, so we don't
even
have that to contend with, so, and I'm assuming it's a 4-bedroom system at the moment?
Yes,
and
it
I
is.
guess
It
we're
was
gonna,
2001, they built it, 4-bedroom.
okay.
So the question would be, do they need a deed
Question is whether a
restriction?
deed restriction would be something that the board would consider
And I saw
for the
Paul hand
workshop
something.
studio.
And then a septic plan to have the sewage go into the existing system, if I can just take a.
Yeah,
Well,
and
that-
it sounds like
this
it
is
might need a
last
pump and to move it
So,
appropriately.
Yeah, 2001. And, yeah, it depends. I'll let Paul explain that because it hasn't been engineered or presented yet. Here's that studio, here's the house.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me get a,
At this point, I don't know
hold
whether-
on one
okay, yeah,
second,
you
since
wanna
the other
get
thing
started?
starts now.
I
Do
didn't
we
know that
want
was a
to
proposed plan.
jump to the other hearing and then come back to
I
this?
might say
or-
just since this is unscheduled, I'd sort of say let's stay on schedule and kind of
Yeah.
keep working
Okay.
on it, just to be
We'll see.
respectful of
So,
the time.
okay, so we'll get back to this in a minute, but we have another scheduled hearing now. So we'll switch to that, and then we'll come back and talk about what kind of needs to be put in place and what options are. So, okay.
Okay.
So we have a variance hearing for a septic replacement at 147 Hunting Lane. And
I'll just put this right
are there any abutters or anybody else who'd like to come up and listen? Great.
And we do have all the green cards, so that's all set.
But anyone who'd like to see what's being presented as the engineer is discussing that, feel free to come up.
Good evening, for the record, my name's Dan McIntyre, representing the homeowners, the Spellmans. They are voluntarily replacing their septic system. They're starting to have problems with it. They're not moving yet, but they are trying to do some improvements to their home. So it's kind of a challenging site out here on Hunting Lane. It's a pretty big piece of property, about 14 acres, but a lot of it is wetland. We had delineated, you can see just to orient it, here's Hunting Lane here. They have the driveway coming up here, they have a separate garage, and then their house. And then they've got like a little peninsula coming out into the wetlands where their existing septic system
House,
is.
Hunting Lane.
Their well is out in the front yard.
I'm just looking at the wetlands.
That
So we did
shows the
some
wet area.
testing in the area of the existing system. It's a lot of fill, the natural soil is down pretty deep. High groundwater table, groundwater table is essentially the wetland elevation. So while we were out there, we also went out into the wooded area up in this hillside over here and dug some test pits up here. You didn't find anything better up here. The soils were probably tighter soils, and the groundwater table was very high up here as well. So we thought it was best, since we gotta seek both Board of Health approval and conservation approval, we thought it was best to just try to put it back where it was already disturbed, rather than disturbing virgin area up here in the wetland buffer. So that's the approach we took. We designed a new system here. We went to conservation, we received an order of conditions for this work, and now we're in front of you.
Okay, so before we go much further, Mark, can you just explain for all of us on the board, so since those soils have already been used, so to speak, for the septic system, like, what does one do to
So-
compensate for that?
Based on the test hole that Dan did up at the top,
The one.
when I say
Oh.
elevation-wise, this one up here, it showed It was very, first of all, a very dangerous site to be soil testing, very wet, hole caving in. It was really, Dan, this I would say is one of the toughest sites I've been around that's been set up for soil testing, because it was dangerous. But he got down to 110 and found the soils that are needed. But if the system is also going to interfere with any of that soil, say it starts to deteriorate, they'll have to remove that soil and replace it with sewer gravel. Hopefully it won't be too bad. Is the system, did you draw the system in, Dan, just about right here?
Yeah, if you can see it, if
Yeah,
if
it's-
you look at
it's
the project,
slightly-
the existing system is sitting in the groundwater table.
Oh,
We're
okay.
proposing to excavate down to that,
Yeah,
remove all
that's the new one.
the
That's the new
filter they
system.
put on top of it.
This.
Yeah, this
Bring in-
orange
and
one.
bring in sewer gravel.
Okay,
They show the old one on.
okay.
So what's the whole profile of the proposed? Like, how thick is the? Is that?
This is Caltex, and it goes across.
Yep.
We're probably looking at bringing in 4 to 5 feet of sewer gravel
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
above the natural material
Mhm.
after we take out the existing system.
and it's right, see how he has the fill line right here?
Mhm.
So that'll probably all be fill. It will be fill, not probably.
And where's their well?
It's out in the front yard.
It's circled it, I think.
Sorry, this is, it's busy.
Yeah, very busy plan.
Yeah.
Right there where it
Oh,
says
okay.
W. 125, he showed his buffer zones to 100, well, that's wetlands, but to this, he showed his distance.
Yeah, the two wells, the two abutters, the other well is in the front yard over here. The other well is in the backyard over here. We didn't measure those in more than 200 feet. So what we're proposing to do is put in a new septic tank with a pump chamber, because the plumbing is low here, we can't really raise it up to the gravity system.
Tank chamber.
And meet the groundwater offset. So we're proposing to do tank, pump chamber, and a leaching bed, and instead of the conventional distribution, pressure dosing, we're gonna do a pressure distribution system, which basically is we're gonna pump down through the leach bed, so we saturate the leach bed every cycle. And we utilize the entire soil absorption area during the cycle. We are asking for a number of variances and local upgrade waivers. The list is kind of impressive, but they're all
Yeah.
related to the same issues.
I think it's my first 3-pager, so.
When was that original system installed?
And you said it's in the water
Like
table?
in the groundwater?
Yeah.
They did things different.
Clearly a big improvement. Okay, so we can go through one by one. and,
Okay.
so-
I'll start with the Sherborn regulation variances. Section 1.2, use of a leaching bed in lieu of trenches. We're proposing a bed here with pressure distribution, which is allowed under your regulations, but I did put it as a variance just in case. The bed will give us a bigger footprint or more leaching area and a smaller footprint versus the trenches. And we have limited area to work with here, so we felt the bed was the way to go.
Any
I would agree
comments
with
on
Dan,
that?
based on the site constraints. I don't recommend beds, but he's modified the system to not be a typical traditional leaching bed. He's actually, as he said, he's dosing it, so it would saturate the whole area, allow it to work in a better process than a typical leaching bed. So, based on the site constraints, I agree with him.
Anyone have any comments or questions? So do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 1.2?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
The next one is 5.1D, and there's actually two under here. One is the requirement for 3D pull tests. Because of the limited area, we couldn't get 3D pull tests in there. We got one very large one in the area, and we had one over here, just to verify what's over here. But so we're asking for that waiver. And
Okay.
also under that same section is required for 2 percolation tests. Because of the fill and the depth of natural material and the high groundwater, we couldn't do any percolation tests in the area of the system, so we're doing the SIP test under the DEP policy.
Okay. who amended from
Me.
5.1? C?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so one
C.
is C
The
and
deep
one is
hole
D.
is C.
So we'll
Yeah.
do them separately. And just a quick question for you, Mark. So during the installation, you'll be out there inspecting at some point. So if for some reason something's radically different over here than where the test pit was, then you can decide.
Yeah, the engineer and I will
Yeah.
review it together and see if change orders due, and if it's a very large change order, where it would come back to the Board of Health, such as new location
Okay.
for the leaching area.
All right. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 5.1C?
So moved.
Second.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then, do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 5.1D?
Should we do those two together,
Yeah,
Dara? I
because
think, because they're related.
Yeah, they're the same.
Because
Actually,
he couldn't do the
7.1B.
perk test, so he's instead
Okay.
using the sieve
All right.
test.
So 5.1D and 7.1B go together.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, little percolation.
But we'll still vote them separately, but,
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever really explained why you
Oh,
did them,
7.1B?
because you couldn't perk, so this is where you send the soils to a lab,
Exactly,
and they
yes.
evaluate what kind of soil it is and what the
Yeah.
perk rate might be in a
And then-
laboratory setting versus in the field.
We would have been trying, Dan would have been trying to put water into a hole of water, and that doesn't do anything. So that's basically, simplify it a little bit. Plus, I wouldn't let him, we both are trench safety trained. We couldn't go in there.
OSHA.
Yeah, we couldn't go in there. They could cave in on us. So even if they tried dewatering, not this hole. So,
So, do we have a motion of 5.1D?
So
Normally we do them
moved.
separately. You
Well,
want me to
those
actually say
two,
them?
Why can't we
yeah,
do
those
it
two
together?
can
All
go
right.
together. Yeah.
And 7.1B.
So moved.
Second.
So, any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
The next one is 8.0, section 1. Groundwater offset under the Sherborn regulation should be 5 feet. We're proposing to ask for a 1-foot reduction on that and go with the Title V requirement of 4 feet.
Okay, and
I'm okay with
it's a big
Based on this.
improvement over what's there, and the
Yes,
dosing, I
yes.
would assume, helps improve
Yes.
the biomat formation and all the rest, and distribution of the material across the whole system, instead of it coming out in one spot. So, do we have a motion to grant a variance to 8.01?
So moved.
Second?
And all those in favor?
Aye.
8.02, it's a fairly common one for repairs. This is a section of the regulation that says if a lot is unbuildable, if the groundwater table is within 5 feet of the surface. We have a high groundwater table here, so we're asking for that.
And it's a,
We're not at, we're no new
it's a
construction.
replacement
Yeah.
improvement, so, couldn't be done otherwise. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to section 8.02?
So moved.
Second.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next one is section 10.2, the setbacks. Sherborn regulations require setback to wetlands of 125 feet. I'm asking for a slight reduction.
95%.
With the blessing of the Conservation Commission.
Yes.
We did get conservation approval of that.
Approval, I should say.
So the wetlands are directly adjacent to that. We're actually proposing to put a retaining wall here to hold that fill back in there, prevent any impacts to the wetlands. But there's no way to get farther away from the wetlands.
Okay. Do we have a motion to grant a variance to 10.2?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and now the state.
Under Title V, we get some local upgrade waivers that we requested.
Approvals.
Yeah, it's
Because of the
approval.
constraints on the site, local upgrades.
Approvals.
Yeah. We just talked about that.
Because of the constraints on the site, we're asking to shrink the system down. Basically, the long-term acceptance rates we got from the sieve test for this type of soil result in a very large system. We feel probably much larger than we would have had if we actually perked the soil. So we're asking for a reduction in that, down to 22%. Under the state code, we're allowed up to 25%. We got it in 88% of what would be required using the SID test.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So, so you're talking about the area that was estimated conservatively using the sieve test. You're asking for a 22% reduction?
Yes.
Okay.
In the leaching area.
Right, but that was a conservative estimate.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
that's,
And is that why the state allows up to 25% reduction? Because do they recognize it?
I don't think
test
they
in the
never-
whole state, or?
Well, I think they allowed it based on site constraints, not really if you went to a lab to have this perk test considered, or if you did it in the field. I think they're not
Limited area.
related at all,
No.
but Dan's reasoning
Even if we could have done
is,
perk test.
the rationale is fine.
yeah.
Okay.
It could have been, it was based on a 30-minute per inch rate. It could have been, from the evaluation we did anywhere, probably from 10 to 30. But the approach in the lab is that you take the most conservative approach.
We had kind of two options here. We could have reduced the system down, or we could have asked for more reduction to the wetlands, but up to the groundwater. But because of the
Would
offset
have
to
been in the
wetlands,
wetlands.
we kept the groundwater offset high as we could and went for a smaller system.
Good points.
And I guess you were trying to fit in that disturbed peninsula.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
Do we have a motion to grant a variance to 15.4051C?
So moved.
And the next local upgrade
Oops, hold on.
approval.
Oh, wait.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Next local upgrade waive approval is setback to wetlands. Title V is a 50-foot setback. As you know, we're asking for 13 feet on that one, for
And
the
so,
same reasons.
yep, and again, Concom, who's the agent for the state, would approve that. So do we have a motion to grant a variance to 15.4051E?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next one is use of a sieve test in lieu of a percolation test. We've gone over that one.
Yep, okay, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to 15.4051I?
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor?
Aye.
And the final one is only one test hole in the area of the system. And we've already gone over that, but that's also a state local upgrade.
Okay, so do we have a motion to grant a variance to 15.4051K?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I'll close the hearing, and are the plans ready for?
Plans
approval?
are ready for approval with the condition for a deed restriction for the garbage grinder prohibition.
Okay.
There's
And-
no IA technology here. The Caltex is a general approval at the state level. So,
So do we have a motion to approve the plans subject to the one deed restriction receipt?
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Think you
Welcome.
sign this, Darryl?
Yep.
I'll have it ready like by noontime tomorrow.
Does he need the form?
Anytime tomorrow afternoon.
Ellen, is the form in here?
Yeah, actually, Dan.
Dan?
Dan? Dan,
Where are you going?
Mark
See,
has one,
I
if
should have
you
the
want to
form right
take it.
here. Ellen is proficient in getting things ready. Watch, there won't be one here now after I said
There
that.
should be.
There is. There you go, it's all right.
Alrighty, we'll take care of it.
All right, I'll have to apologize to the Fitches. You get to stay for another hearing, or you could go walk around the building if you like. But,
It's nice
okay,
out.
so it's 8:10, and we have a variance hearing for a well replacement and revision to a previously approved plan for 60 North Main Street. And are there any abutters who, okay, if you'd like to come up while he's reviewing and.
I do have all the green cards,
Okay.
so that's all set.
some new faces.
Oh,
Right, I haven't
yes.
been here in a while.
Oh.
I'm Joe Nihil from GLM Engineering. So this is 60 North Main Street. This is a proposal to install a replacement well. And this is actually a revised plan. This has been in front of the board previously, where a few variances have been granted. And Ms. Johnson, the homeowner, has had some back and forth with the well company. We initially had it proposed right next to the existing well. They couldn't do it there. So they said, I think if, correct me if I'm wrong, they said, we'll just drill it through the existing well, not next to it, but through it.
Over drill it, basically?
Yeah, just right through it. Then they came out and they're like, no, we can't do that. So this has been going on for almost a year.
Oh.
They've had some problems with the well drying up and so forth,
Yeah,
so
I
it's an issue.
remember discussing this one, right.
So-
How deep's your current well?
Pardon me?
Do you know how deep your current well is?
Like 14 feet.
Yeah, I think it's a hand dug.
Really?
It's a hand dug well.
Oh, my.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's not
So-
good, yeah.
Like I said, this is like the third time. So they said they could do it on the other side of the driveway. And we did a system back several years ago, so this is a fairly new system. This is really the last resort on where this well can go. So like I said, there's a number of variances. I believe the first three were previously granted, but because we're moving it now to the other side of the driveway, now we have an impact on the abutter's property. And
Are you the abutter?
Mary is the
No.
abutter. So, what we're asking for today is, the town has a local regulation that wells be 75 feet apart, and we're providing 64. And then 125 to a septic system and a well, and we're providing 150
So of the abutter septic?
to the abutters. Yeah,
Okay.
to the abutters well and the abutters cesspool.
That's a cesspool there, and that's
And I will note that
No, so it's-
the 115 does meet state code,
a necessary well.
so we still meet the state requirements here.
Well, we're talking about a well.
We're
Yes.
talking about a drilling a
Drinking
new
water well.
Right. So it won't, even though it wouldn't affect your,
It won't
it
hurt the
wouldn't be a
cesspool.
risk for the neighbor.
No,
Could
it's
be a
more,
risk
if-
for
is it
you.
a concern, right?
Right, but, so that's good.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So then
But I'll let him finish.
the
and then
issue
I'll-
for
Okay.
the neighbor, and there's, no magic guarantee about the distance, but, just whether the new well will have an impact on that well. So that would be the other issue, so there's,
Do you know how deep are they planning to drill?
Yeah, it's,
Do you know how deep your well is?
Yes,
How deep is your?
500 feet. I'm not worried about the distance to my well.
Mhm.
And I'm not even worried, I don't want to interrupt when you're done.
No,
Tell-
go
Okay,
ahead, go
yeah.
ahead.
And I'm here to support, I'm obviously want her to have water.
Concerns.
Yeah.
Not here to tell her she can't have water. My concern is, and I don't know if there's an answer to this, but my biggest concern is that I have a quarter acre of land. I have a new well in the front of my house, so that's already there.
it's right there.
Now, I don't know,
Right.
what's the distance?
Was that Marie?
That's
Yeah.
not
Sure, I
anywhere
thought she was
near
on the
her
outside.
septic at all.
No,
but
no, your well's
Yeah.
there and
In
her
her
septic.
Yeah, it's
That's
way in
not
the
in
back.
it.
You have a
Yeah.
cesspool.
it's on this side.
My concern is when I have to put in a new septic at some point, I have a cesspool with a leaching pit. And it's perfectly fine, but some dopey inspector's gonna fail
Uh-oh.
it, I'm sure.
No, I don't expect.
I don't mean. I would be careful.
Yeah, okay.
Because there's gonna be groundwater, I'm sure there is, I mean, there's
Yeah.
the water table
Is it-
side there, I'm
and
sure
then,
it's gonna
then
be.
it should be failed.
Right.
And some
Okay.
towns don't even permit cesspools, so.
I know.
So it's
All
not
right.
necessarily,
So I'm
don't be,
sure
it
it's gonna
happens,
be-
You're
but.
saying someday I anticipate.
I would leave the
Yeah.
adjectives
Yeah.
out. A quarter acre, and how much land do you have?
Oh, Mary Ann, you-
Almost an acre.
30 seconds.
So,
she's stuck.
I
So that's
am
a tiny
not
lot.
going to, so I guess what I'm wondering is, when I go to put in my septic system someday, and it'll probably be sooner than later, because I'll, don't want to leave my son with that pleasure when I drop dead, so. I don't have that much room, I mean, every inch counts.
Right, and then there's that existing well
So now, are you
54.
going to say to me, I can't put a septic in because I'm 115 feet from her well?
We always have variance hearings, so you know.
You just saw.
I think you've been to a bunch of things, so
Yeah.
we will look at the site constraints and,
Uh-huh.
you know, if,
It's
because
one
now
thing-
that you've got a well over here, so, right, once you draw that setback, your whole, it's a small piece of property,
Right.
It's
so.
very small.
You have constraints, and you're doing, and it would be,
But
right.
it's one thing for you to give me a variance to my own well. But
Right.
my concern is, are you going to say, oh, no, I'm
No,
not
but
gonna.
this is 54, which, you're 58?
She's 58, you're
So that-
58.
That's a variance to, like, I think your neighbors at 54 looks like
You're
they're
gonna
already.
definitely have some,
Yeah,
Like, you have a hearing
because-
no matter what, because you're already in 54.
So what you really should do is you guys should hire both the same engineer, make your plan in advance, and then
but
do
this
them
is what
both
I'll
and figure
say.
out the best place
This
for
is what I'll
both
say, is if you look,
simultaneously.
we show this 100-foot radius here,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you see it goes right through the house. I mean, it really just encroaches on this little area here, and then here's your, is this a garage?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're not gonna put the system here
No.
because your well's there. Most likely, you're gonna put the system here in the backyard.
Right,
And
well,
that's,
that's a driveway.
This is the bigger issue.
that'll be the bigger issue than.
That's
Here's the
not
radius.
who's-
Oh,
This
54.
That's your
is
neighbor.
covering your entire property.
Right.
So,
So you're saying that's my other neighbor's well?
Right.
So we're not
So
gonna
you have
tell
a
them
problem,
they
but it
can't have
won't
water,
be
we're gonna
this
tell
new well.
you can't have, no, I'm just kidding.
Right, I know. No, I know, I guess what I want to avoid is the tight tank.
Yeah.
There's always something you can do.
yeah,
They hate me.
we'll have to find something.
Marion, I bought my house from you. don't
I
think you're the fabulous-
know, the rest of them hate me.
No,
But-
So
no,
I
it's
don't-
smart to think
But
in
what I'd say, like,
advance.
That's
punchline
what I'm
wise,
trying to
it
do.
sounds like the issue, when there's a well issue and a septic issue, it will be the well that exists at 54.
Right.
And if you have a failed system, I think the goal for failed systems is trying to make
Improvement.
them as safe as possible.
Possible.
Right now, it's a bucket. And
Right,
so,
yeah,
there's a
And,
lot of ways to make it
Of the
safer.
3 wells, this
Right.
is the farthest one away.
Right.
yeah,
okay.
And so,
and
Yeah, that's
your
there's-
neighbors should be happy if you get rid of a cesspool.
right.
Yeah.
So it'll be an improvement to what they're
So it sounds like our
possibly
punchline would
drinking
be,
now.
our assessment of the risk associated with the move of the well is that your risk already is driven by 54. Moving this closer won't drive your risk anymore because this already overwhelms it. And so, while it's hard to predict the future, from my standpoint, this to here isn't what feels like it's gonna be the
Okay,
game changer
it's
for
more
you.
that.
Yeah.
It's that.
Definitely.
And then your own well.
So I have a question, Daryl. So, once they drill the new well, before, they'll have to do the pump tests, and then it'll be tested to confirm that there's no conditions of impact. I presume they're gonna drill it pretty darn deep. I mean, that's a standard practice nowadays. So then we'll at least have the assurance that, like, your cesspool obviously isn't impacting the new well.
I'm not worried.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about, I had a shallow well for 30 years. Right here, right next to theirs. And my water was perfect, and my cesspool is here. And I've never had a water problem. The only thing finally, after 30 years, and it was only 12 feet deep, I was getting 11 gallons a minute. It was a fabulous water supply.
Is that groundwater?
It was,
Right.
but, and there was no there was nothing in it.
Yeah.
And I used to have it tested all the time. It just ran out of water. That's the only reason. I
Right, that's
built
why
it.
it's.
Because of
Yeah.
the drought.
But I wasn't, so I'm not worried about contamination. I'm worried about
Yeah.
someone saying, no, you can't do that because, I mean, have you ever said that I would have to put a well for them someplace else?
I've never
So-
ran into that
But
situation.
Because
that's
it-
why it's good that you're
This
here,
property's
because
Yeah.
everybody, we can
Have a
try to help
discussion.
you both at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah. No, and I don't want to
You're
impact, I
kind
can
of
see that's
grandfathered in
not.
here,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you have an
The
existing
trick is you
dwelling.
started with the cesspool.
Right.
There's a lot of ways to get better.
I know.
Right.
Well,
It's an
you know,
upgrade.
Yeah, I know.
And there's a lot of different technologies out there nowadays.
Uh-huh. That can do it
Yeah.
with,
There's-
because I do have, this really is probably the only place that it's gonna go. Where's your the well on your new one? It's probably gonna have to go here. Is that even closer to you? No.
Is that a garage, right?
Yes.
Is that, yeah. So you have a driveway like right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
But anywhere you put it, even if you put it here, it's gonna be closer to your own well than to this well.
Right, okay.
You see what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And this will
That's-
all be on
It's
record.
probably the
That's not
best,
my- Wait a minute. Where's my dwelling? That's my dwelling, my well. Where's the street?
It's in front.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm looking at it backwards. You're right. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay.
I think that it's probably in the best place it could be on your size lot,
Right.
Yeah.
the cesspool.
Oh.
I mean,
But it's
Oh, yeah,
also
yeah.
like this corner's already not feasible, because
Right.
you've got a garage, impervious surface and everything.
And it would
else.
also be
Unless you ran
closer.
trenches, not to
Yeah.
prejudge it, but I mean, there may be options to just have something
in the
along.
back, but in that
We'd
area.
grant variance maybe to the property line and
Okay.
kind of.
Okay.
So,
Now,
There's
if
always
I,
a way.
all right, if I have a three-bedroom house, and I'm only saying this because I'm involved in the Lilymans, and I know they had, I guess, the smallest system you can put in is a three-bedroom, but there's a restriction on their house that it can only be used as a two-bedroom. Is that gonna be,
I don't know, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think it's because it was an existing two-bedroom,
right,
that's why.
Oh, and
But if
That
someone's
rule's more
gonna
for new construction. So if you have an existing two-bedroom house and you put in a two-bedroom septic,
well,
they
which you can't do that. You have to do a three-bedroom.
not
No,
for an
no.
existing house. If it's an existing
you go ahead, Joe.
two-bedroom,
And you're
you
sticking.
put in a two-bedroom, but they make you put a deed restriction on it. That's a state code.
Well, there's, it's a three-bedroom system, no? Lilymans?
Is that the one we talked about a couple weeks ago?
remember
No,
that.
that
I
wasn't.
thought it was a three-bedroom system, but it was, okay, but they couldn't do more than two bedrooms. I didn't know you could buy
The
a
minimum
two-bedroom system.
three-bedroom thing
Okay.
is for new construction.
And that's a state
That's a
Okay.
state
level
restriction.
No, no, I understand
regulations,
that.
so
I just
there's
didn't
really no
want someone to
wiggle on
say,
that.
I have a three-bedroom house, but you have such a small area, you can only have,
Oh,
That
no.
won't happen.
No.
No.
Yeah.
I've been doing this since
100%
1985, don't ever say it won't happen.
Well, I mean, like, it depends, like,
Here's-
if it's
I don't think this board's
That
ever
won't
done
happen.
that.
But, I mean, as long as it's a
That won't
three-bedroom
happen.
system. Like, if
Okay.
it, like, if it's not a three-bedroom system and you say, we have no idea what the system is.
Right, right, okay.
Then then you can run into trouble if you say, oh, I wanna add stuff, it's like, we have no idea what the system is,
Okay.
and so we can't
You
assume
can
that.
always replace what's there.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
And with the cesspool, that's what is gonna be happening, so.
Well, actually, it's a
We'll be
cesspool
delighted.
with a leaching pit, but that's beside. I tried to get them to, they wouldn't let me just put in a new tank to hook up to my leaching pit, which I thought would be a better thing to do. I
Just-
thought, if I have a leaching pit and I have a cesspool, why don't I just dig up the cesspool and put a
Tank.
tank in there? Wouldn't that be
Not
better?
allowed.
What I might suggest, just in the interest
And
of
it wasn't
time,
failed.
State code won't allow you to do that,
So, there you go.
So
sorry.
maybe if we can just kind of zoom back to the
Okay.
well.
Yes, so,
So it sounds like you're supportive.
Okay, I'm
Are-
very supportive. I have no problem with that. I just want to make sure that I'm not,
Digging a hole.
right, no pun intended.
Dug into a
I
hole.
waited all this time for that pun. This is my whole goal for
I'm
today.
glad I'm able to help you
Right,
out now.
exactly. We're gonna put you
Okay,
in a
all
corner
right,
instead of a
that's fine.
hole.
So for the three areas that were
Okay,
already
thanks.
granted variances, you're actually asking for less
That's right.
of a variance? Okay. So do we even have to vote
So
on
you
that?
don't have to vote
Yay.
those. That's why I marked on there that they've been previously granted.
Okay,
They're
great. So we can just skip to the last two.
Right.
Okay.
so, do we have a motion to grant a variance to 6.0E?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And do we have a motion to grant a variance to 6.0A?
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Have a good night and enjoy water.
And so I'll close the hearing, and are these plans ready for approval?
Yes, they are, yes, they are.
Do we have a motion to approve the plans?
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Oh, did we lose our, they did go for a walk.
Oh,
Thank you.
See you later, Joe.
Okay,
they coming
Thank
down?
you. Good luck. Here.
They have to leave.
oh.
I will do it tomorrow. You'll have
Okay.
it tomorrow.
Um,
Afternoon.
All right. Now, did everybody get to see the
Yeah, I looked
floor
at it.
plan?
I saw that for, I mean, it seems like it all comes down to if it's 9 rooms or if it's 10 rooms.
Yes. And I'm counting 10 and I would be willing to consider a deed restriction on, I'd feel
No, like,
comfortable,
no
more
occupancy
comfortable
here.
with, yeah.
That's one.
Because the
This one here.
sunroom, you know, it's
Because
sort
it's
of an
closed off.
appurtenance off the living room, but it
Yeah.
has
If
doors,
they
so,
blasted the
or
wall.
it looks like it's doors. So it can be closed off, so I wouldn't want to really exempt that room
Right.
or something.
And
So-
again, that's really driven by the future patterns of use. It's a conditioned space with doors that's, like, would that be 120 square feet, 130 square feet?
Yeah, it's well over the
Yeah.
minimum requirement, so.
So, Mark, do you have any other particular observations?
No, I agree with the observations made. I was just explaining to Lisa that if this whole wall was removed where the original kitchen was to the family room, then that would be one room with an eating area, but they're two separate rooms.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So with that, it's hard for me to say it's one room,
yeah,
right.
to explain it as one room.
So
yeah.
would the
No,
deed,
I see it as two.
the deed restriction would be clearly limiting it to the existing 4 bedrooms?
Yes.
Okay.
4 bedrooms and, right, that
Right, and
the,
that can never be turned into a full bath, right?
That would be back
Right.
to the drawing board with the board. You may want to suggest that, but, you know, they may come back someday, but,
Right.
because that would then start giving
'Cause, like,
anyone
pretty
the
quickly
idea
you
of an
could then-
in-law.
Right,
or
because you're sort of
something.
like, we have a structure that's now finished, that's plumbed, that's got septic access.
Yeah.
You know, it's, what would that be? So that's 20 by 32, so 600 square feet, you know,
Good size.
right.
Nothing against tiny homes, but, you know,
Yeah.
you want to make sure your septic has the capacity.
Right, which just doesn't.
Yeah, but this, they're not asking.
I guess how have we historically thought about this sort of, again, recognizing this is not an above garage apartment, but just kind of, I think this is a place where it's important to try to be as consistent as possible, because it feels a little bit like some of this, if somebody said, hey, we're coming in for this, we would say, we don't approve that because this needs a 5-bedroom system. And we're sort of now, after the fact, through it sounds like no malfeasance or kind of deception, but just misunderstanding. And so we want to be fair to the homeowner to say there's a bunch of sunk cost into this. Our first pass would have been to say, we should design a system, if we're going to have 10 rooms by the state code, that needs to have a 5-bedroom system.
Which is a possibility, because they have a 2001 septic system.
Yeah.
The engineer could add another leaching, is it trenches, Paul?
It's Caltex.
Caltex, could add another Caltech unit to it.
I don't have the plan in front of me, I don't know if they got a variance to groundwater, things.
Oh, I don't know, Paul. I'd have to, yeah, that's true. I'd have to look at that, too.
Well, so,
And I'm not attached to that. I just want to make sure that we're consistent, because I wouldn't want somebody to feel like, boy, they didn't follow the rules and they got this.
Yep.
At the same time, recognizing there's a large sunk
Yeah,
cost and no evidence of malfeasance or misdirection or anything else.
That's a good
Like, it
point.
seems like they, good faith, tried to do all the right things and all the right steps.
I'm sure that this system couldn't be replaced until it's failed. You
Yeah.
couldn't add a bedroom to this until it's failed,
Right,
because the groundwater is obviously less than 5 grade.
Okay.
because that's why they use this system.
Construction,
Yeah.
they don't allow that.
Okay,
So this is
that's,
a
that's a,
failed system before it can even go to 5 grade.
right, so if there
Unless-
were a deed restriction saying, you know, this system is only adequate for 4 bedrooms and no additional bedroom, you know, none of the existing rooms can be converted to alternate uses,
Right.
and it can't have more than 4 bedrooms throughout, including this separate structure,
Right,
then that would address,
They'll be fine with that.
as Paul
I
noted.
would like
Oh, go
to
ahead.
note just that there is something that's different here. We've typically given deed restrictions to basement rooms. And this is not a basement room, but what seems akin to me is that it's a separate building.
Without access, without.
With
separate- yeah,
The
without
kind of
immediate-
function
right.
you think of basement rooms of
Right.
having, of crafts and other
So
kinds
it's
of
sort of analogous
things.
to
and
like a
something-
stable space.
Right.
Although a little bit more finished. I mean, I think for me, it's tough, like, I think,
Mm.
ultimately, I think I'm supportive of the deed restriction just because there's so much sunk cost, but if the same plan came in as a new plan, I think I would say, you know, we're sort of up against a room count, but again, in the absence of
Yeah,
any concerning behaviors, I think this reasonably balances the need to follow the regulations consistently and mindfully while also being fair to homeowners who we're sort of trying to make reasonable choices and not coming up, like,
Yeah.
it sounds like we don't have a feasible septic solution to get them to a 5-bedroom system. There's no way around that, and so.
Well, if I can, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna suggest is, as Paul noted, we'd have to look at the file. The Board of Health has always allowed for one additional bedroom when waivers are granted to the local regulations. But as Paul noted,
Right.
for a failed system,
Right.
as Paul noted, we're not, well, for a repair system, it doesn't have to be failed. But Paul did note that we don't know if they already went from 3 to 4.
Right.
You know, if they did, they're at their max. If they didn't, there is that possibility.
I think
They
we
could
also
design
just
4 to
say-
5.
I think they're not trying to get to 5. I think for us, it's just saying we want
No,
to be
they
consistent
be-
in the room counting
Right.
approach.
Sure,
And so I
understandable.
think, again, I think it's important to acknowledge, we may not have said as a de facto, do we love this plan? There'd be these issues that we sort of talk about in
Right.
terms of being able to expand space, but, like, their function, what they're doing is they're taking down, like, they're having fewer rooms than they had in their old system. So they're sort of reducing their room count in the renovation that's
Right,
proposed.
I mean, they're not
Right.
adding,
Right, they're reducing.
adding square footage
The
either.
other thing I like to point out is it's for the use of the folks at home. Just adding a bedroom, a bathroom doesn't mean you're
Right,
gonna
right,
create twice
yeah,
as much waste.
right.
It's for the people in the home, it's not for business or an outside.
I think we're totally fine
But
with the
it's
toilet once it's in.
highlighted, it's not the bathroom,
Right.
but it's highlighted what the issue is
Right.
by the, coming to our
Right.
attention.
Right.
And, right, so,
Can we find the history on it before we vote?
Well,
Of that
do we even
question?
have to
I mean, I don't
vote
wanna
right
get 'em
now?
to
I
a
mean, don't we need
5-bedroom
to,
sys- Like, if
Yeah.
they're not asking to get to a 5-bedroom system, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why we'd want to try to get them to a 5-bedroom.
no, I think the issue is a reasonable solution, a deed restriction,
Yeah.
to just make sure that everybody is clear, this is not appropriate for more than 4-bedroom use,
Right.
period. But do we vote on that already, or
well,
without seeing the
because the
plans?
building application or the certificate of occupancy can't move forward without some kind of decision from here. Otherwise, the agent can't sign
And
off.
just so the board knows, I rejected this application, but I was more or less informed by the builder it didn't matter because it was already done, so.
And do we have a sense where that process broke down? Like, did
Uh,
the builder just not do?
They submitted an application to update rooms in the house. I have the application
Yeah.
with me. I approved that because there was no change outside of that. And they showed workshop for the other room in this, and that's all they showed.
So the bathroom wasn't,
All of a sudden, this came in thanks to the building inspector inspecting and seeing
That's
that
basically
the,
the language around the artist workshop.
Yeah,
Was,
the
this is a
bathroom-
workshop, so you're again picturing this is more barn-like than
well,
finished.
it wasn't the workshop, it was the bathroom. The bathroom
They
got
added the
discovered,
bathroom.
which required them to resubmit. And when they resubmitted, I rejected it based on 2 factors. Room count had to be decided, and they need a septic, a detachment to, an attachment either to the
Connection.
house, connection,
To
or
deal
to the
with
septic
this.
system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, connection's a better word.
So the one thing I'm concerned about is if we've been giving deed restrictions to basement rooms, it's not a basement room, so are we firm on, the concept that it is a whole separate building? I don't know
I
what
mean,
that,
that's-
how far away it is on the
I
site.
guess-
I can't remember
I mean,
again, but.
this is more akin to the Abbey Road discussion that we just had, which is, so there's an existing structure, there's an existing number of bedrooms. The septic was appropriate for that existing number of bedrooms. Our concern was, what happens if, your circumstances change, or you sell your house? Could someone convert one of those other rooms into an additional bedroom, and then you have a septic that is inadequate for the number of bedrooms? So I look at it from that perspective and say, okay, well, this is really no different. They're not saying we're trying to convert something into a bedroom. They're not asking to add bedrooms. So as long as we say,
Somebody else could see that as a really lovely housekeeping unit.
well, that's why I'm saying
that
the
somebody
deed
would live
restriction
in.
would
But
be,
we
would make
can't
that.
enforce, so sometimes when we've looked at these basement rooms, they're not the kind of prime space, they don't have
Right.
windows sometimes, that somebody
Well, what
would
about the
want as a
study?
bedroom.
Oh, are we saying that the building
That one
code
didn't
was-
have privacy, so
Yeah.
that was
Right.
the issue there, the angle was
Right.
it didn't offer privacy for a bedroom space.
And I think that's why
So
it's
this
sort of
one
important-
offers privacy,
Right.
potentially.
I could add, the board has approved the addition of a bathroom on Snow Street to it's actually a barn, a horse barn, and they put a bathroom in there. I don't remember the number.
I don't think it's a bathroom.
No, it's
not
about
a
that,
bathroom.
this
It's
is,
a-
they turned it
No,
into,
again, it's a separate structure that they added a half bath to.
But that,
But
but is it a
For
finished
horses out there
space?
with
Go.
people.
Right.
Lisa, you hit it right on the button.
Is it a finished space? That's,
Right.
this is now
But for
an
me,
upgraded
it's-
space.
it's
Like, I
finished.
don't care about the bathroom. I
Yeah.
mean, I think
Yeah,
it's a
no,
sort
I
of
don't
question
either.
of if the stable is unheated, open to air, I'm
Yeah.
not worried about somebody turning that to residential space. If they said, I've got a finished workshop with hardwood floors and
Heating
walls
and
and
AC.
windows and,
Yeah,
And
you
heat.
know,
Yeah.
or I went from like a
and
cement
a teenage
structure.
kid would love to get
Right.
away
Oh,
from,
yeah, that, are you kidding?
Right.
My son would move into that so fast.
or, you know, a beleaguered parent.
Just have dinner ready.
But I guess the question is, what's the alternative available to homeowner if we say, because they sort of already have all the sunk costs in, and
Right,
we
well-
don't have a state.
You know, we would have to research those options, and I don't know that somebody doing something and then coming afterwards and it being a problem, I'm uncomfortable with that, because
Right.
that might encourage people to
Right.
do and then
And then ask
ask
questions
for
later.
forgiveness,
Yeah.
yeah.
I guess the other question is, how do we factor in their house before doing anything with the bathroom had one more room than it does after the proposed work? So in some ways, they're moving towards compliance.
Then to really answer these questions, I can pull the file and see if they went from 3 to 4 bedrooms, because they
Okay.
do have the opportunity, if they didn't, to go to 4 to 5. If
All
you give
right,
me
you know
1
what,
minute,
we
I'll
don't
pull
have
that
any
file.
other appointments, but we do have a captive audience who's really.
They're on the edge of their seat.
I think that's because they're dozing and sliding out of their seats, but.
Should,
Eric's
can
just
we,
like, I can't leave before Paul, it's a rule. He's like, I don't know what the problem is, all my variances got through, Paul's just gotta step up.
should we jump to the minutes for, while we're waiting
Yeah.
for the agent?
I thought
Yes.
the minutes
And,
were really
and,
good.
and try and have an unprecedentedly
I
short
read them
meeting?
quickly.
Oh,
I had no issues.
there you go.
That's
There
just
were
crazy
some that
talk.
felt like seconds.
So-
I had one minor edit.
Okay, I had a few. I have to turn on my laptop.
They weren't ours.
So we could,
They were ours.
depending on the nature of anybody's edits for the executive session minutes, if we're not talking about anything substantive,
You can
we
vote
can
on
vote.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I had no edits.
I had no edits.
I had no
I had no
edits.
edits.
Excellent. So, do we have a motion to approve the executive session minutes of September 6, 2017?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. Beautiful to get this is since so long.
It can go to 5 bedrooms. It was only designed, it was a 4-bedroom when they started.
Okay, so it could.
Doesn't matter. Well, you've done it many a times, Paul. Variance of groundwater, the board always still, the enticement has always been to allow someone to go with an extra bedroom.
Yeah, for a failed system.
No,
No,
no.
for
That's why I'm
replacement.
saying, Paul, you've done these
Why do
many
you keep
times.
asking for good, bad news?
I'm like, you can start doing it again if you don't want
What would they
to.
A few
to
people
do
thinking we
to
do
go to 5 bedrooms?
They would just.
unusual
the good-
things
and
here
just
this
so-
evening.
If this system was designed in prior to 1995, prior to the new Title V changes, they couldn't do this.
Right.
But because it was
It's new.
designed in 2001, the state allows them to add on to systems. So they could add on to the septic system. As Paul said, it was a Caltech. So right now, they have 3 Caltech units of trenches and trench formation. So they could add on.
They
would
could
be
add like
some-
another,
And
They could add
can you
what-
tell it all from that, whether it would fit in with the slope,
They
the
might,
soils,
they would
anything
have to
else?
expand the system. I can show the board the plan. So, and Paul can talk to it too if the board wishes. If there is one. Could expand it maybe at, Paul, how long are your Caltex? 87 inches? Something like that?
Well, there's
They're snap.
76, I think.
76. They're snap-in units, these are the Caltex, so they're
If you wait over
76,
five.
they could snap a few over here if they wanted to, and extend each trench maybe by 76 inches. Again, I don't wanna design it, but, you know, it would be another fifth to, it's our, you know, the percentage would be another 20%.
Yep.
So you can elongate, basically,
They might have to break down the barrier, but I don't see where it was a 3-bedroom going to 4. It would have said that design flow was
Yep.
for an 8-room residence,
That
4
would be
bedrooms.
a fairly large expense. You'd also have to replace the septic.
Well,
tank, which is-
I understand.
Yeah, but
I mean,
we're
they'd
just
rather
trying to
be-
see
Yeah.
if it's even an option, and
Yeah.
so,
And that's a good point. It is an option. If they ever wanted to do that, they might want to.
so you haven't seen the property, though?
I saw it
recently,
from
at least?
the cursory.
Oh,
Like I said,
okay.
they weren't home, so I'm not gonna just go in. The
Yeah.
building inspector's been on site,
Okay.
but it looks like, it doesn't look like a big barn or anything.
So in a
It's
way,
smaller
the
unit.
part that compels me to think it would be more like a basement and not used as a bedroom is that it is separate from the main house, so,
it's not like
Doesn't
there's a
seem like it would be
kitchen.
a-
That's all the reasoning at
you know,
all.
you'd have
Yeah.
to put on galoshes
Separate
and stuff
structure
and
is
park it or go have
More
breakfast.
And
in the morning.
shower.
But
To
again, I
shower,
think it
eat.
sort of becomes a question of like, if you say, I guess that's where the bathroom gets tricky, of kind of what
Right.
set of amenities make it
survive?
more, well, not even like, could you survive, but sort of when you say, what are my risks? Like, that's sort of what we're trying to balance, of this turning into an extra load on that system. It sort of becomes a
Right.
question of how much like, and how much like a functional dwelling space is this? Like, it's habitable by definition, but it becomes a question of, like, if I have a toilet in there, it's a little bit more appealing than if I don't have something, but they've already got water in the space for the existing sink,
Yeah.
and all that. Cause the soapstone sink and all that is original,
Well, it was there when, it was there before they
yeah. So how does that get out to the septic?
We were just saying that there'll need to be a connection.
No, but like, there's an
Oh,
existing
existing.
sink in the
Happened to it
structure, like, how
before,
does
I
it
don't
get
know.
out?
Yeah, I don't know how that got in there either.
Probably
The-
doesn't,
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably just goes.
right to the ground,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was submitted as a workshop. There was no work to be really done in the workshop. It wasn't presented
Right.
for any additional work.
If you have a sink in the barn, that further discharge would be out of front.
Right.
That's right, no sinks. You can't have a sink. Sink is plumbing. That
Right.
means you have to have disposal.
Right.
We're dealing with another situation right now. So people with barns, we tell them their best bet is to run a hose in there. Give their, you know, that way you have water for the horses or with animals and so forth, not to have sinks. You
Right, it
can't,
does imply that, is there, well, there must be plumbing running to it to get the water, so somehow they're connected to the well,
you know.
In the workshop to get water in.
guessing,
Yeah,
as
and
opposed
so there's
to.
been probably some work done.
Yeah,
And now it was discovered through questioning the builder that it's finished. It's not a workshop, it's finished, finished room with heat, so.
yeah.
That was all discovered after the original approval of July 17th.
So it
Okay,
sa-
so
it
to me,
sounds like
there's
based
a
on
little
the-
bit risk, would it be a bedroom? Then there's also, this is,
I think
this
it's like the
situation, are there
consistency,
any
right.
other things that would start
So basically, from a room count
increasing
standpoint,
risk?
it was, I guess, is the workshop newly finished, or has it always been finished? and
It was a workshop according to the application that was submitted to us, and
There it
then,
is.
I don't know when, how, and where, but they put a half bath in there and finished the
So
workshop.
for me, I think it becomes a question, like, the way I'm thinking about it, just in terms of trying to be consistent and kind of following the guidelines, is they had an 11-room house. If it was finished before, they had an 11-room house. If it wasn't finished, they had a 9-room house. If it wasn't finished before, they had a 9-room house that they're now taking to a 10-room house by finishing a previously unfinished space. And that's a problem. And that is what brought them out of compliance. If they started with, when they kind of came into that house, by whatever the prior vagaries, which they'd have no particular insight to explore or delve into, it was an 11-room finished house. They've taken it from 11 room to 10 rooms, and for me, there are pieces of that that feel different. Like, if we had risk, if we're saying it's a room count issue, they're getting closer to their licensed system, and it would seem that the board should do things that were supportive of getting closer to a licensed system, and taking down a wall doesn't make this space necessarily more desirable like they're both 300 square foot rooms before something close to it. So taking down that wall is what made it more desirable, but if that act is also finishing a space that was previously unfinished. From what he describes, it sounds like it was previously finished since his wife was using it as a studio. I can't imagine that that was like concrete and, you know,
Yeah,
they
hard
had
to
sink in
know.
there, they had other
It was
pieces.
not a studio in 2001 for people that I worked for. and
Yeah.
this
Is there
Yeah.
a floor plan from back in 2001?
I'd have to check,
I mean,
you know, but I was told it
that was
wasn't
the
finished.
studio, and, you know, now this wall is, the demising wall is gone, but
Oh.
I guess
Oh.
my impression was that that was a studio, and then there was a workshop, and then,
Oh, and you
Now
did
they-
say that there was a wood stove, right? So it was
in one of the
heated with a wood
rooms, there was
stove
Right.
in
a
one.
wood stove,
So I
and
think
one
it-
was
Right, so I
finished.
think it was previously conditioned, and it, so for me, the question of, did they add new conditioned space versus did they reduce the room count for existing conditioned space that was previously non-compliant and has been non-compliant for 15 years?
Mhm.
In the latter case, if we say we're adding new conditioned space to the footprint of this home, to me, that's where the push to get to a 5-bedroom system and say, we need to get into compliance because you've added conditioned space, it stinks, I'm sorry, but there's a net gain of conditioned space, and that needs to be accounted for in some fashion, and the room count is a rule that does it. Versus if there's no
I
change
would
in the
still
conditioned
wanna-
space, then the deed restriction feels more
Let's say it
comfortable
was
to me.
all there before and they've actually reduced the room count by one, I'd still want a deed restriction.
want a
I
deed-
So
agree.
there's
I'd
no
want a deed-
confusion
right.
going forward
I'd want a
on
deed
this.
restriction in that case, but I wouldn't feel compelled to say they need to change the existing system other than to get a toilet tied to it appropriately.
Although part of my rationale would still be that it's in a separate building that's less likely to be a bedroom, just like a basement room is less likely to be a bedroom. So it reduces the risk.
I don't
On
find
the
that
other
reasoning at
hand,
all.
yeah, on the other hand, I
It's
used
like
to
more
rent a
viable.
little compound on the
Yeah.
Cape that was 3 separate buildings, and one of them was, quote, the main house that had, you know, bathroom and the bedrooms, and then one was this big, open, family room, no bathroom, and a loft space that was used as an extra bedroom upstairs. So it was a completely separate, didn't even have a bathroom. You had to walk outside, which made it kind of fun for the kids, but,
Right.
I mean,
Was that
people-
more of a vacation thing, though? Or-
it was a heated room, it could be, it was a
No, but
year-round
But I
thing.
think your point is like
No,
if you're in
it
here in
was on my
January.
vacation,
point
I
is
was
that-
renting it from someone, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
they clearly, in the winter, they use that as an extra bedroom.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And I could see that, but people
That's
use
when-
their living rooms as extra bedrooms when guests are over, but that doesn't make it.
no, this was
You know, it's
dedicated,
an
yeah.
Point is that-
intermittent kind of a thing, so,
But I mean,
This
that,
this is something interesting.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
This is 2014, I just found it in a file. They came in and I approved it, but I noted something, and I'm reading upside down, but it says, studio is not part of connection to septic system, not allowed. They were
oh,
refused to go back then. This is what they
okay, so
proposed.
that's what
So
kept it,
somehow they got a studio finished
okay.
in a workshop. When did that get finished? I don't know. I'd ask the building inspector if it was finished before they started
Yeah.
the project this year. But I just saw that, I'm saying, oh, wow. So I didn't allow for this to be finished, because it wasn't attached to the septic system. Here we are, 3 years later, discussing it, so.
So, was it the same
Same
owners?
But the issue is saying,
Are these the same owners?
Yeah,
It's Jonathan Fitch, yeah.
I just saw that, I wasn't looking for it, but it just said, oh,
Yeah.
something else happened.
So that was the request to
But was
finish
it-
the
that was-
space, to finish the
Yeah, they-
former workshop
The
space?
application came in, let's see how they worded it, sometimes it'll say, relocate and remodel existing kitchen to existing family room, and move old kitchen, the dining room, create new second floor laundry in existing bedroom, add AC to house. That's how it came in, this was the floor plan that they provided to us, so. This was the house, they originally were going to do this, I guess, back in 2014, and that's when
Okay.
they said studio not to be.
But the
it's
issue
not a
then-
part of the approval, since
Right.
it wasn't not allowed, it wasn't allowed.
and it wasn't allowed at that time
At
because
that
it,
time.
because it wasn't connected to the septic.
Exactly.
So if we said if they put the half bath in and they connect it to the septic, that would
Now
have addressed the
it's-
concern in 2014. But it becomes a separate question of how we'd want to
This
handle
has
that.
more history than I
Right.
thought.
Right.
Yeah.
I just saw that.
No, no worries.
So,
Since
part of me says now
2014.
we need to understand what the condition of the studio and workshop were, really, before we
mean,
give a
that's where I'm at,
final
where you-
analysis
That's where
on
I'm at. Where
this.
you guys at?
Yeah, I think so.
Does it really matter, or either way, I think you're agreeing to not have it be before we leave it?
Well, no, but I would say, like, if it wasn't finished space in 2014 and they newly finished it, then I think I'd say, you added space.
That's
I
more
might wanna be
that's
more
more problematic in
formal.
terms of
And-
precedent
and
than
that's-
if it was
and that's a little
already.
bit less for them,
finished.
And I
just to
think
be
then it
consistent.
needs to be a variance request or something at that point.
Apparently, it's been needed space since
but-
2001, when
2001.
Well, he said there was a wood stove and.
But, like, I could heat my,
Woodstock
gr-
in one part and a central heating of some kind in the other part.
yeah.
I'm
But if
not,
it
I'm not
wasn't
clear.
finished or something
Yeah.
else, then, if it was rough, barn-like, I think they talked about, right,
for me,
they
it's
talked
also-
about making it a garage, but then they decided to fix it up, so how recent was that?
Well, 'cause
I'm not
it's
sure.
actually a wooden hole in the
Right.
garage, 'cause it's a wooden floor,
Yeah.
it's elevated, right?
Okay.
Put cars on it.
But I think for me, it's a piece of it's this property and a piece of it just consistency with other plans. If we sort of like, oh, I built a 600-foot outbuilding, I've now finished it. No, it's totally not a room. You're like, well, so I think for me, a piece of it's the consistency and sort of,
Yeah, we need to at least ask the questions and make sure we understand what it is we're evaluating, and right now I'm feeling like I don't know
Have all the
exactly.
information,
enough.
yeah.
So,
So-
and they're not,
So-
impossible questions, we just
Right.
need to know, and then we can decide versus all the speculating that we're doing right now.
But I don't know that they've actually done finished work, do you know, Mark?
The building commissioner and the builder were interviewed, and the building commissioner responded that the work's already done, so he could not honor my rejection of this permit that I rejected just, Friday?
The builder told me today that they left in the plumbing.
Okay.
so it sounds like we've got a couple of
We got a
data points
couple
we just
things
need to have
going on.
clarity
Yeah.
about kind of where we are now.
And then we can talk about it again at the next meeting, assuming that there are answers just to those
Is there
few
anything
questions.
on the homeowner or the contractor?
I think so.
Statement about existing conditions?
Be
Yeah,
nice to know
maybe-
the historical review of
Right,
when those,
when,
was the workshop finished, was the studio finished, when,
yeah,
and under what
Where are
permit?
you gonna take them, and where are you gonna get that information?
Well, we know, one thing we need is the existing condition, which I believe the building commissioner wrote us an email stating it was, I can read the email if you like.
I don't know that we need the current, I
Yeah.
think for me, it's really what did it look like before this project started.
Yeah,
before
I-
this most
Right.
recent
And so I think,
project.
from my standpoint, I'm, hoping the homeowners won't lie to us. I certainly, from my standpoint, I'm comfortable with their word,
Yeah,
in
me
sort of
too.
describing the property. I don't need pictures, I just need them to say this is what it was.
Okay, well, we'll see if we can get that for you before
Okay.
meeting in time for you to review it.
Did you see it, Paul, back in 2001? Did you go in there?
I didn't
Oh,
really,
okay.
it wasn't connected to I don't even have a finished floor elevation on that, I noticed on the plan.
Okay.
So, it was just a building out there, but I know that the wife was an artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And in terms of the sort of general approach, if we find that this has been finished for many years and we're reducing the room count, I'm comfortable with deed restriction as the solution there. If this is newly finished space, I would be less comfortable, but would want to revisit with the specifics.
Yeah, me too.
Um,
I think I,
So I
Just-
think it's
In the
not
same
that this is
place.
impossible for the homeowners, it's just trying to figure out how do we,
All right, well, we'll
Kind
get
of-
you some information.
and not just guess at our analysis.
Just so you know, the building commissioner said in the meantime, the builder can complete the exterior work required and to have the rough wiring and the building inspection so that he can insulate the building envelope. So if he insulates it, they're continuing to finish it.
right. Well, so I think that's also just for the homeowners to know, like if we can pass along, like,
It also means that it's not finished now.
Right. It is correct, it was rough plumbing, that's why I wanted to check that. But they're being allowed to continue, and that concerns me, because we
I think we should just say,
rejected the
like, we
permit.
may end up saying, like, they're sinking new money in.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think, and the builders, I guess, are guiding
At
this
risk.
process, and to just make sure they understand, like, we may end up saying you need to do the septic, and this is, they may choose to proceed, but
At risk, right.
that's the risk.
And as a question, if they, let's say, we thought they needed a new septic, if they removed the bathroom and the plumbing from there, then would it go back to possibly to its prior status, or
Well, the question is, was it finished?
is it finished?
Yeah, no, I don't, I actually don't think that that's the
You're
deal breaker.
totally flexible, like,
Yeah.
in-house plumbing, Lisa's like, I could go either way.
Well, no, I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
the other issue.
Okay, great.
Just wanted to make
So
sure.
you'll be
Okay.
talking to the homeowner, Paul? Okay.
Thanks. All right.
They're welcome to call here, Paul, if they have any questions.
This isn't like an abutter issue or any notifications of variance hearing, this is just more data next week.
Yeah, for the
Okay.
next wave, because again, I think they would have to request something formal. We can't just go, oh, what's the
It's very confusing.
Yeah.
Alright.
I know catching up on things that have already happened is hard.
It came in July for renovations, and it said workshop, and now all of a sudden it's not workshop anymore, it's a finished room, and I'm like, that's why we do need to know, when did it turn from
When
a
did
rough
it-
workshop, I look at a workshop as a bench and carpentry tools,
Yeah,
to a studio finished,
yeah.
with the wall taken down.
Because if the wood stove was in the workshop and it was unfinished, and then the air could just flow into the studio that looks like it's all glass, that might have been more of a three-season room
Yeah.
that you open the door and it tries to be a four-season, but, so, yeah, it's complicated.
The other options is that they could maybe look into having a more flexible floor plan on their first floor, if those aren't load-bearing walls, and open up
Yeah.
some of those rooms, so then they could say,
they're-
oh, well, we
If
only
they
have
opened up
3
the
rooms
sunroom, then,
on the
yep.
first floor, then that would also
They'd be all
alleviate
set.
it. So you gotta, there's multiple solutions.
Yeah,
That's an excellent idea.
open up to the eating area or to the sunroom.
So in right now. Right?
Said.
Open concept.
Even the
Okay,
kitchen.
so,
Yeah? Well,
do you need this in your files down there? Did that come from you?
Yeah, that came from you.
And this, too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we have minutes. Was there anything else? Agenda, Lyme disease. Here's a tiny topic. Anyway. Sort of a minutes thing? Or do we want to talk about Lyme?
Mostly, I just wanted to figure out, so I was approached by a community member about sort of deer hunts. Again, I've got no independent agenda. I think this is sort of like the trees. I'm just trying to figure out what's in scope for Board of Health.
Okay,
As
yeah.
opposed to saying, I think Board of Health should do this. I'm trying to figure out what Board
Deer
of Health.
hunts comes up periodically, and I could at least share what happened
Yeah.
in Dover.
Yeah,
So, and then there are a couple things. So people think if you get rid of the deer, which, would certainly help with deer ticks, perhaps, but a lot of deer ticks are on mice.
we can get rid of the
So,
mice too. It's
We
just
can
much
try,
harder to
so
hunt
we
them.
need to
They're very
release a
tiny.
lot of feral cats.
Tiny arrows.
I have some good
Yeah.
cats.
Yeah.
They're hunters.
Yes, my cat used to be, but,
Yeah, yes.
so,
Or terriers, we could have small
the
dogs.
house.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
choices.
actually.
okay.
dog-
And,
dog's better.
yeah,
Yeah.
weasels and,
Yeah.
and fox could go after them too. So anyway, there was a deer hunt attempted in Dover. And, it did happen. They had a
Yeah.
deer hunt. I think they got 4 deer, or I don't know.
Some small volume.
Even if they got 10 deer, they estimate that the numbers that you'd have to reduce to get the deer population to an acceptable number per square mile or per
Yeah.
acre, however they measure it, was several hundred.
Oh.
Yeah. So it wasn't close.
So, and that was a town effort, because I don't see that as only a Board of Health issue, because
Yeah.
now that's public safety
Right.
Right.
and police
And then you
issues
gotta weigh
and
the
who's hunting
firearm,
where
Right.
and.
firearm danger versus.
Yeah.
They travel to?
And they did it on public lands over
If they
there,
travel.
so, that are frequented by dog walkers and
All kinds
runners
of
and kids
people,
and all
yeah.
the rest. So, it's a big undertaking, and for a minor dent
Yeah,
in,
so it sounds like feeling the board is out of scope.
Well, you need is that
I'm-
family that used to have wolves to move back into Sherborn,
Where'd they have the
Oh.
wolves?
really?
right near me. You'd hear them howling at night. It was really
Oh.
kind of eerie.
Did they run loose?
No,
Okay,
I'm just
curious.
So they got the
Really,
really
really
dumb
nice
get
deer.
some, we need to get some.
Just looking up the travel patterns. I mean, do they travel, would they go from Sherborn to Dover to Westwood? I don't know, I was just
So
looking
if
it
they
up.
tend to go that far, we seem to have the same batch coming around our yard.
But I thought
all the
that
time.
people still did do deer hunting. There's
Yeah,
certain
people
days
do
of the
it.
year
People
that
do it
are,
on-
that are
people do it on-
authorized and,
Yeah,
People do it on private land.
yeah.
And so you can authorize private land
Right.
hunting. Again, I'd say probably not for the half-acre lot, but for the larger lots.
Right.
But then it becomes a question of if you sort of have all these fragments, just for the effectiveness. But I think the other challenge is just how much interest is there.
yeah.
And,
Can you
know,
get enough deer? So
Right.
we had deer hunters approach us to hunt on our land for years because I
Same
guess deer hunters just know something about the patterns of deer and they figured out, and we see them nearly every day in lots of them.
Yeah.
Near the house. I mean, I run outside all the time, chasing them away from my attempt at landscaping. But, so they would come, and we finally found somebody who we thought
Was a
when-
responsible
also
owner.
s-
Right.
from just being aware of how much damage they do to wildflower
Yeah.
populations and just their, it was hard to
Yeah.
think of killing one because they start as fawns on our
Right.
property and they played all around the yard this summer. But anyway, so we did have somebody come in with a bow and
Yeah.
he got a deer his first day and that was it. He never came back. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's possible, and there are some, I know there's some property owners around us who have hunting. And my husband makes a great venison bourguignon. So,
It sounds
so
like
if you ever need a
But I think
recipe, it
it's-
was spectacular, but,
yeah.
okay, that was.
And I think it's I mean, it's a topic that is really of great concern. And the problem is that truly the vectors, there are many vectors, and I don't know how to get that under control. I have this secret wish that the reason we have a lot of wild turkeys is they're eating the ticks in the yard.
I hope that
You know,
too,
that's
when
like
they come
wishful
through.
thinking,
I think
but
there's also like the population drive with like milder winters and other stuff, like drives up.
Ticks.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think like all the
Way up.
populations, like it drives up the deer population. I don't know what it does
Like-
to the mice. Like when you have milder winters,
Oh,
you
yeah.
have less snowpack, you have
Oh, yeah,
less
I mean,
starvation,
there's
and then you have
environmental
rising
reasons,
up
yeah.
population,
Yeah.
and so it sort of then self-reinforces.
Right, because.
It's more, unfortunately, tick safety for individuals. What can
Right.
we do, which
Yeah.
is the least preferable option, but I think
Yeah.
it's the realistic
Yeah.
option for people.
But as far as like Lyme, I mean, I'd be interested in knowing if anybody wants to organize a discussion night or something, but it does get political, and I don't know whether the Board
Yeah.
of Health should be doing what we should do, and if there's an interest on that, and I didn't know whether we should organize some.
Dr. Owen used to get involved with this too, if I'm not mistaken. Ellen, am I correct, when we talked deer hunts, didn't Chris Owen have some involvement with it? I thought he was a hunter. Maybe he's not.
That I
But-
don't
Who knows?
remember.
If I remember right,
You got the Owen part right, Chris Owen's a big one.
yeah, that's what I thought. I think he had some ideas and, you know, again, I think you have to address the ticks themselves but the control, it's interesting. I just found out deers basically stay around their food source, very close to it, within 200 yards. And they bed not too far from their food
So
source.
your house, they're enjoying your hostas.
Yeah. That are now hidden under other shrubs
I
next
saw
to the
movement. I
house,
was really
but,
shocked.
Well, thanks for talking about it, guys.
so, okay, so,
But thank you too, I thought he was. Yep.
okay, so he can take care of the,
Oh, he's gonna love
can he
me.
hunt
We
ticks?
have a million things on our minds.
Chris, if
Tick
you're
hunter.
listening, I'm sorry.
But I mean, we have a million things to do, and it's not like we're bored, but, one of the things that I would really like to see is our Board of Health doing more that's actually public health, and I was wondering if you guys, what you think would be the best way to find out what people are interested in, and should we organize a couple lectures or I mean, I could even have it be around the Council on Aging, you know, have a topic of discussion or a lecture on a topic of public health.
I know people do want to know about ticks.
And I would be glad to go, I've done that before, where I met with the Council on Aging and we discussed Board of Health subjects. But,
I think Lyme is just hard because I think that I think my views medically are discordant with the views of people who feel really strongly about it. And so I think that it gets tricky
Yeah.
about how to navigate that, because I think we have different points of view from different perspectives, and I don't want to invalidate their
well,
perspective.
I always
and-
like to talk about both,
Yeah,
because I don't think that I think it gets too hard, I don't want to take a stand
I think
when
it-
I'm
I thi-
talking in a big group.
My perception is that what's controversial is treatment
yeah.
Right.
and symptoms
Diagnosis
and
and
diagnosis, not the things that
Not the sort of
necessarily
tick
a
safety.
board
Right.
has to
Right.
do with. So I think it's something people are very interested in, but I
Yeah.
would not say it's connected actually to Board of Health issues, because we're
Right.
starting to broach into medical, diagnostic, and treatment
Right.
methods, which I don't think we should do that.
Yeah.
Although,
Okay.
over the years, a number of people have talked to me who felt very strongly about the board addressing the Lyme issue, but they thought that we could eradicate the deer,
Yeah.
apply pesticides, do something very broadly in the town for an issue that I see as, it's not just Sherborn, it's such a regional.
I mean, it's like
wide
absolutely.
spread.
Yeah.
Metro West
And
is
if-
high prevalence, Cape
Yeah.
Cod's high prevalence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if
I mean,
other
it's-
places, like, why would we
It's about 70% of Massachusetts.
be able
Right.
to achieve
Yeah,
that
maybe we-
as a board? So I
Yeah.
felt like the expectations were very high. I guess we seem magical, but,
I feel magical.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, then you are the new.
I will not be the Lyme magic man.
Yeah. But
But-
it is true,
So-
that, like the state health, you know, our website has something that the state provides on the subject, and it might be, it'd be appropriate for us to talk about some of the
I
controversial
think,
issues
and
and how they
helping
relate
people
to
understand
Sherburne.
that we can't, without some really massive effort, we're not gonna be able to eliminate all the deer and mice.
It's
so
actually
then the
not even
next
feasible.
lines
It's just
of-
not, I don't even
No,
want to.
it's not
Yeah,
feasible.
yeah.
So then the next lines become, right, how do you avoid getting a tick bite? Or
Right,
once you
or
get a
what-
tick, what do you do? And
Right.
that you need to act quickly, and you
Right.
need to do the tick checks, and you need to be vigilant, and don't just wait for a ring.
So
You know,
how-
all the basics, and go over that so that they're not thinking there's an easy solution on the have no more ticks side.
What
'Cause
about
that's
like
not.
a top 10 list or something that we could post about
Yeah.
just that? Like, okay, so if you know, things that you can do to maybe reduce the potential, like the permethrin, you know, clothing, on your clothing, you don't even have to put it on your skin.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and there's
Right.
clothing manufactured, and then
Right.
if for some reason, you know, doing tick
So around
inspections
prevention
after.
is like a much more consensus, and it becomes a sort
Absolutely.
of less politicized topic and maybe
Right.
more helpful.
Right, and
Right.
that's actually already discussed on the
And
website, that's what
it's already on
exactly
there.
what it
There's a
discusses.
link to the,
I mean, I think-
DPH,
Yeah.
and that's
But-
what
but-
they have.
But then you have to click a link, and then you have to go. I'm just saying, like,
No,
in
and there
terms
might
of
be,
just.
as you're mentioning, a population who would rather have someone to talk to and ask
Yeah, either
questions and
talk or-
express it in their own way and get an answer, or something like that, but.
I know MAHB has had some good presentations on tick Lyme disease prevention,
And my mother
vector-borne
had some
disease.
ticks and wrote to, she contacted a few universities, so University of Rhode Island sent her a great packet of information on stuff, so there's plenty out there.
Yeah.
I'm sure UMass has something. So the resources are there. The question is, do people want the face-to-face interaction?
I think it'd be
Is that
nice.
what you're advocating for?
Well, I was wondering,
or-
I was interested
or
in
just
finding out if you guys
resources?
think there'd be a value to that.
Well, if I may, and we just, medical as well, public health as well as environmental health, we just saw tonight a resident who knows a lot about what we do and nervous about the size of her yard and the cesspool.
Yeah.
maybe there are other people out there as nervous, and if they only knew the new technologies, the engineering,
Right.
that there's so much more
I think a
available.
septic night would be
Yeah.
Yeah.
awesome.
I agree.
What if
Sure.
we start with like a septic night to just kind of say,
I actually
like,
think
here's
that
like
would be
septic
really
101,
good.
I think, and we could even have, like-
outside
Chocolate milk?
Right.
No.
And you could include wells and we
No,
always
like if we
recommend
could get
testing.
some of the engineers to like show like models of systems, like here's like,
That's a great idea.
I think that,
'Cause
I
then
think
it's
people would
separate-
really
I
like
think it's
that.
separate from a project, and I think the other
Yeah.
thought I had is you took for some of the Barnstable Title V materials that I found really helpful
Yeah,
and very
they were great.
accessible.
Yeah.
And so like I think also thinking about other ways to link to that from the website so that people want to learn more.
Yeah.
Like I found that the things I know medically, like it got right, and the things I didn't know
Right.
engineering wise, it made really clear. So it
Right.
felt
Yeah.
very understandable and accessible and kind
And I
of plain
think that it-
language.
It would be good to have a water night. A
Yeah.
water
Yeah.
night and a septic night, a
two
drinking
together.
And
water
in-
night.
We'll
and a
have,
septic night.
we'll
All
have
right,
water
I'll tell
first,
you that
then
we
septic.
tried, Groundwater Protection
Yeah.
Committee had many attempts, and others in town set up a lot of nights to talk about water.
Yeah.
What?
Controversial.
No,
What?
5 people would
Yeah.
come.
No, but if you made it, if you didn't make it like esoteric or academic, if you just said, hey, we're gonna talk about issues pertinent
Yeah.
to our town, whether you're doing
Uh-huh.
buying, selling, or new construction,
Right.
or expanding, just make
Oh,
it
if
about
you
the
related
real
to real
estate.
estate,
Yeah,
maybe.
I think
And
then
it-
it'll
yeah,
resonate.
could
like a
come
little
in,
bit like
yeah.
a Q&A so that people
Yeah.
could ask questions
Yeah.
and sort of say,
Yeah,
I just wanna know-
hypothetically, I have a friend
Hypothetically.
who has a
then you can
house.
say-
Exactly right, yeah.
So you can kind of say like, I don't have this
It'll
project in front of you, I can really ask my question
Right.
without being like, oh my god, if I say it wrong,
Fear
it's gonna
of-
be $10,000.
Right, but also, don't you think people's interest has been quite heightened in the recent
all the
past with all the
40Bs,
discussions
yeah.
of development
Right.
things?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, I think
Yeah.
it's something we should consider.
seconded?
Well, it wasn't on the agenda, but we can
Okay, sorry,
again
sorry.
discuss it.
Well, maybe we
can put it
can
on the
discuss it,
agenda.
let's have it as an agenda item for the next,
Okay.
the next meeting, so.
And we
it's
could
like-
take the temperature of the
Right.
room.
Like
What do
New
you think?
Year's
You feel
Eve.
good
come
about
What do
it?
you
about
think?
your
Would you
septic.
come to septic night?
But maybe we could do it in the winter.
Get enough coming here every other week.
It's like I'm here enough.
Jeff, you're presenting.
I have an idea, let's do it instead of the meeting.
Well, no, I think we
Actually-
could
actually,
talk
I-
about
That's why the real
water.
estate,
Well, like the water, I mean, I guess you said this, but I think especially with the general
Water.
chemical questions that
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
had, like again, having,
I think it'd be
I guess I
really
wonder if
helpful.
it would be helpful to sort of have, like, general chemical, what can I do, or,
Mm.
you know, some of those pieces, or kind of well testing, what do people want to think about? Again,
No,
I
I
may
think it'd
overestimate
be-
the interest, but,
We could all stand in a different corner of the room and have different topics that people
Right.
could come and ask us about, so not
Like
everybody
circuit
has to listen
training.
to
Yeah.
stuff that they're
Yeah.
not interested in,
Right.
but kind of do them all at once.
my wife has
So-
also offered to make cookies for the meeting to see if it would make people less angry.
That's so
Well, if
sweet.
we're
How about
chewing, it'll
us?
make
Yeah.
us
Could you
less
get them
angry.
on the internet somehow?
Cookies?
Could you get them on next door Sherborn?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
Here's my
Is that what
response.
they mean
Have
by
a
cookies? Yeah.
right, exactly.
Do you accept
Well,
cookies?
no, but I actually, honestly, I really think that it would be good for us to have some something like that, which
Like
is
an open
inviting conversation, listen to what people are concerned about, so it's not that we're
It's not
only
anchored to a
doing things
specific
when somebody
project.
has money at stake.
Right, or a
And-
problem.
Yeah, and also so people can understand things, and so that they can realize that it's I think it's helpful when people understand things better.
Yeah.
And it does apply to everybody in different ways, so, that's my,
Yeah, no, I
well, I'm
think,
glad you guys, we can find topics that are not controversial, like Lyme is very controversial. But we don't
think
have to
they're all
talk about it.
We'll do something easy like vaccines. That'd be great.
Oh, right.
Sharp disposal.
No, but I can talk about, yeah, so I think that'd be great if you guys, let's have 2 nights, septic night and drinking water night.
we'll put it on the agenda next.
Let's have it on the agenda and just kind of take the temperature, because if everybody's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm only coming for my septic, I don't need to hear
Yeah.
about septics in general.
Yeah.
I need to think about this once. Then,
Oh, are you guys thinking about doing it during a meeting?
no, I think we
No,
should just
no.
like, during, since this, I think we
Have it
should have
on the
gone off the
agenda.
Lyme
During
disease
February
agenda.
vacation.
Like, we should say, I think we should put it out there, because I think it's possible
your
there'll be some
backyard.
associated costs depending on like whose time we're using and what we're asking.
Yeah.
And so I think just to have it as an agenda item, so if somebody had strong feelings about it, they could
Mhm.
opine.
Pipe up.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, you know what we have done very nicely, though, is addressed agenda items.
I feel good.
So, on our next agenda, we'll have it. So,
So have,
So are we
Fantastic.
back on the minutes?
now we're back to the minutes, and I haven't pulled these out yet.
I know I have one on page 5, but
Where
I
are
don't know if we
Where
want
am I?
to start when you do
Yeah,
it
you can-
chronologically.
No, you can do that.
Okay, because it's under the general
General
chemical, yeah. So, which you did a great job on, in general. I was very impressed. DNAPL and good job. It should say in
Where?
the third line, so in the second line it says including volatile organic compounds, and then it should say primarily, chlorinated chemicals and 1,4-dioxane.
Okay, repeat that where it says,
So just add the word primarily, because like the chlorinated CVOCs.
where would you want me to add the word primarily?
Okay, disposing of its compound, including volatile organic compounds, primarily,
Oh, okay.
chlorinated chemicals in 1,4. But I think you got the rest really well.
So I have a couple, but
Where?
at the end. I wanted to reread to make sure I have it right. You,
At the end.
yeah,
Where?
so are we done with the middle? In the beginning?
No, I'll go
Yeah.
back, I have a
Yeah.
bunch of little,
Okay, go do
Just-
your things.
oh, you're reading that now.
Well, I
All
read
right,
it
so I'll
before,
just-
but I'm just rereading it to make sure I have it
Okay,
right.
so I'll just read the things that I had. So
Okay.
under 2, first paragraph, suggested that the board might want to test it out, but I just said, test out the usefulness of additional agent office hours, noting that the administrator and clerk currently address walk-in needs.
Okay, and you'll be able to give me all your.
Yes, I will be giving that to you. And then on the third paragraph, Dr. Vitale asked how long of a pilot this would be. Chair was unsure of the logistics and what the review would demand. That's what we talked about tonight, too. Under, on page 3, it talks about the scope of work, and I was describing that, and I just expanded a tiny bit here and there, various words, like it's literature review, it's literature and research review, because he's talking to people too about what they've done. So not everything is in the literature. And find out what information exists already, which is similar to is there, but I want to be clear that this isn't he's not building little miniature systems and testing them out himself. So,
if you can do that, that would be awesome.
it would be. And maybe that's what we should all be doing. So, then I just had a few other things within there, just mounding designs pursuant to answering the question of how could the Board of Health amend what Mass DEP already, touched something too, what Mass DEP already has, I just said already specifies for mound design with additional provisions so they can perform better. Let's see. Under 8, second paragraph, after the third sentence, I just wanted to re-highlight, because we spent a lot of time referring back to that original design. So I put in a new sentence that said, as was discussed earlier this evening, meaning, Mass DEP requires that the best available original design flow information be used, which in this case is the 4-room bungalow. So we could even, I don't know if we want to say, as was discussed earlier this evening under a specific item, but we had similar issues. The people who had the 600 gallons, and they were reclassifying their system. But I don't know if it's worth putting in under item
No.
number, or just say as was discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on page 5, I believe, sometimes I can't tell because when I add or delete, it kind of shifts things, but there was a line beginning with Mrs. Hess stated. It's just and I suggest taking that out because that relates more to their personal situation and,
Circumstance.
yeah.
So it needs public.
Oh, yeah,
So
take that whole line
take that
out.
whole, and that's marked off here.
They'll keep the peace.
And, there, under the general chemical discussion, there was, talking about the sampling that Mass DEP had done that didn't follow the protocol, so the test results might not be fully accurate. And I just added the additional information about, and might be low for VOCs, because that was the concern that the, both Ethan Mascoop and then the technical people who are involved, TRC and all, have with that testing that had been done. In there, I also clarified on the following the money, so I just expanded that because they're following the corporate financial resources is how they follow the money, is looking at the corporate structure, so. Oh, bye. And under the tree issue, number 12, I just put in a little more introductory, because we launched right into the topic, but like why we were talking about it. So I have a sentence that just said that there was an issue of whether the Board of Health should be more engaged in the relationship of trees to road safety in town. Kind of goes from there. And I also added in noting later on in that section, also the board has a representative for the Public Safety Committee, and this issue may be addressed there. And I think it's on the next agenda for the Public Safety Committee. Okay.
So, can I make my comments?
Yep.
So, a couple of sentences I just want to combine, so they sort of are more accurately represent what if I didn't say it right, what I was intending to say. So, the first sentence of the paragraph, which is way down at the bottom, it's the third paragraph up from the bottom, it says, Dr.
Which
Honeywell.
page? And
Page 6,
Okay.
where you just were. Dr. Honeywell stated that one philosophical argument is what the role of government is. She stated that she feels there is a value to the board's input on this issue, and it's not, and because the public will benefit from different perspectives. Really, that's where the sentence that's later on belongs, where you say, where I said, she noted that clinicians are required to disseminate safety information every day. waiting for her to be done, because I'm making a lot of changes. Tell me, ready? And then, she stated that she personally has an interest in this topic, and I would say, due to a personal experience, period. Um, Okay. Dr. Honeywell stated that she accidentally fell into this debate 20 years ago when I moved to town. And I was interested that people were interested in safety. Then going to the next paragraph, tell me when.
Okay, wait a minute, you find it. Okay,
The next paragraph, that Dr. Honeywell noted the safety study was completed 20 years ago and then cross out the rest of the sentence, to examine safety by examining objective data. Can't use examine twice. To analyze, or to evaluate. How about to evaluate safety by examining objective data? And I would just cross out when people were not quantifying. I'm not sure I said that, but it's a lot. It was a lot of detail. Sorry. And you can just cross off the sentences. So she stated she looked at objective data. I would just put it in one sentence. Okay, and then the last sentence in that paragraph, Dr. Honeywell felt that the second phase will be relevant and that we should collaborate with other communities or committees. Sorry, other committees. And then on the last page, 7, the third paragraph, third line,
wait a minute. The next, which paragraph, the third paragraph?
yeah.
Okay,
I want to know if, well, I realize now that it's saying Ms. Beardley noted that Dr. Honeywell is planning to do more research on the topic. Okay, so never mind. I was just going to say, I'm not going to do research. I'm just going to complete the second phase of the first study.
Okay. Then maybe that should, rather than I noted, it should be Ms. Honeywell indicated that she would be completing the, what did
And
you
I'll
say,
report
second
back-
phase of
and I'll-
the
I'll
first study?
report back to the board
Rather
when
than it
it's
coming
done.
from me.
Yeah.
okay, I missed what you just want.
Well, when I read it yesterday, it says Dr. Honeywell stated that she's planning to do more research on the topic and interested if the residents will be interested in reading it. It's really that I'm planning to finish the second phase of the study, and I'll report back with it when we're done. One of the people on the planning board who moved to Maine was working on it with me. I forget his name right now. That really nice guy. Do you remember his name?
Oh, yes.
He was working with me on it, and we never finished because his wife got this job offer, so he just moved.
Oh, then that was somebody different. All right.
It was somebody who used to be on the planning board,
Okay, no, I don't know.
and it was the
then.
year before last, and and there's one other person, and we were just gonna do the second phase of the original study
All right, so how about,
in the
so
same way. So
she
I was
stated
just
that
saying
she's-
that we just haven't done it, we haven't finished it. We were gonna complete the analysis now that there's another decade of data. We're just gonna examine the numbers in the last decade. Same numbers.
So, all right, so you could
So-
say Dr. Honeywell is planning to complete the second phase of the study, or the updated
Yeah.
phase of the study, and then that other sentence I've edited could be, Dr. Honeywell asked, and this is in mine, so asked if the other board members are interested in reviewing it when done.
Yeah. That's more accurately reflecting. I
Okay.
think probably you guys didn't realize that it was like sort of a joint venture, shall we say, between me being the representative on the Public Safety Committee and a couple people who were on the planning board, who no longer live in town, unfortunately. So now I have to.
Are there any people on the current Public Safety Committee who are interested in, like,
I don't
do you
know.
need help in this, or?
Maybe. I gave the study to the chair last week. It's gonna be discussed this
Okay.
week. But, but the reality is I just have to, find the time, and it's been kind of, there have been some emergencies in my family. So, hasn't been on the top of the agenda list, or priority list, I should say.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay, not for me either. So, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yahoo. And I think that's everything. Great.
You have to sign warrants and payroll.
Oh, and the.
And the plans.
Oh,
I
plans.
prefer the warrants. Mark, how was the drive?
It was excellent, actually. I enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
was a little tired the first day. 'cause
Oh,
I
yeah.
had flown into Denver.
He was,
Yes, we are
We got all the way out to Iowa.
You are free.
his daughter.
We are adjourned.
We are, yeah,
Sorry about that.
but it wasn't boring to me. I enjoyed it.